move off it. Oh, man.
Well, if you're anything like me, you love a work lunch, but you hate tracking your expenses. But now I love tracking my expenses because with MYOB's Capture app, you can skip.
Hey, Diane. Hi, Han. Just waiting for this to load. Nah, it's just not loading. It's not buffering. It's just should be okay now. Oh, man. I just jumped ahead. Oh, man. I'll stay here, yeah. Okay.
Hey, welcome everyone to our Wednesday Live at Hope for Our Times. We have people both on YouTube and on the app. If you haven't downloaded the app, please do. It's free to download, and it's going to really help us to communicate with you whenever we get censored or whatever else. And whatever else may be, we are also able to take live questions on the app. And we're going to move forward. We have a lot to talk about today. So I'm looking at what's going on and really got to wonder, is this really happening? So right now we're watching the situation in Israel, and we're gonna be talking about this in a little bit. The gas field, that is the Karish gas field between Haifa and the border of Lebanon, up at Rosh Hanikra, that whole thing, it looks like Lapid is ready to just give it all away. Lapid wants to divide Jerusalem. Now Lapid wants to give away this gas field to basically the Hezbollah, because they're going to give it away to Lebanon. This is unbelievable that this is even a conversation that's taking place. We're going to be going there because it's somewhat disturbing. But before we go all the way over to Israel, I have my special guest today. Many of you already know him. And we're going to look at some local news at home because I have a question for Olivier Melnick. And Olivier, right here at home, Berkeley, California, is this really happening? We're watching this Jews not allowed situation. This throws me back in my mind to Germany, Nazi Germany, Jews not allowed. And it's happening. It's really happening, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah. Well, first of all, Tom, as always, thank you for having me on your program. Yeah, I heard about this. A lot of people actually reached out to me to tell me it was happening, and I appreciate that. A lot of people, do that kind of research and then they send that stuff to me, which is really helpful. I've noticed that in the news that on Berkeley, a group of 8 or I think 9 law student organization or clubs of some sort rewrote their bylaws to say that they, as of today or whenever that happened, they will no longer allow any Jewish speakers that will come and speak on behalf of Israel, Zionism, or Judaism. Nothing. They are completely, basically, they are banned from the Berkeley campus. Now, this doesn't mean that if you're Jewish, you cannot attend Berkeley. Frankly, I would reconsider if I was Jewish, and because why would you want to give your money to an organization that hates the Jews so much? But you're right, Tom. It is reminiscent of the 1930s and 1940s, when in Germany we had this thing called, there's 2 words actually, Judenrein and Judenfrei. Basically, the German communities will go after all their Jews, and then they would declare officially that this community, this village, this business, this organization is now Judenfrei, free of Jews. And that was really, those were little mini steps towards the final solution of the Jewish question, which is a euphemism for the Holocaust. So this is, I cannot believe that we live in the days where Jews are now being banned from a U.S. University from speaking on any topics like Israel, Zionism. What's crazy is that the very thing that they're accusing the Jewish people of doing, they're doing to them, because basically they are, in a sense, you could say that Berkeley has become an apartheid university. They're saying Jews are not allowed because they are an apartheid country, which of course they're not in Israel. They're the opposite of that. We already discussed that in previous shows. So it's funny that they're saying they're accusing Israel of doing and the Jewish people of doing something that they're actually doing in the process of telling them you can't do that. So that's, you see the hypocrisy there. And the I don't have his name on my screen. What's his name? One of the dean of the law school. His name is not important. I mean, there you go. Erwin Shermaninsky, the dean of the Berkeley Law School, is Jewish, and he's a progressive Zionist. But by the standards, the new standards of the bylaws, he would not be allowed to speak at his own school.
Yeah.
How's that gonna work?
Unbelievable. And we're actually watching it happen. So we're watching this shift that's been taking place for a while. There's been an anti-Christian sentiment and an anti-Jewish sentiment for quite some time. And we're really watching both of these things increase substantially. The other day, CNN had a hit piece, I think it was about a week ago, on those who believe in the rapture, and saying people have been taught the rapture has created this anxiety, medical problem, a health problem. And I'm reading it and following it, I'm watching videos, and basically what I gather from that, in fact, I'm going to do a video on this next week or week after. What I gather from that, Olivier, and this will lead up to where we are in Berkeley in just a second, is what's happening is it's a hit piece blaming this on those who believe in Bible prophecy,
Right.
Which it's just a matter of time when laws are going to be passed, as they already are in China. You can't talk about Bible prophecy in China. So it's just a matter of time, because there's the majority of religious denominations that call themselves Christian in America are anti-prophecy and anti-Israel. So all this is going somewhere. The best friends that Israel has in the world are really those who believe in a literal fulfillment of Bible prophecy, because we know the Jews have to be back in the land. We know Jesus was a Jewish Messiah, not a Gentile Messiah. We know he's coming back. We know the Jews are going to be living in Jerusalem. Jerusalem's not going to go away, but we also know the attacks the best way for Satan to attempt to end the retirement plan that God has for him is to eliminate the Jews. Well, he's got to deal with the Christians, so he's dealing with that. But he's coming after the Jews. And what really bothers me about this Berkeley thing is everything that you just said, because it just smacks of Nazi Germany. You know, I've watched the documentaries, I've read the biographies, I've seen the pictures, talked with you many times. It's like walking through the streets of Europe in those days that were occupied by the Nazis.
Listen, Phil, I've been doing this for 20 years now, and when I started looking at what was happening in the new anti-Semitism and you know, building on the foundation of classic anti-Semitism up to the Holocaust, I thought this is going to get worse, but I never thought, Tom, for a second that it would get that bad so quickly. And really, it's been a curve. It's been, you know, going bad, and now it's like going really fast. I mean, if people don't speak up against the Berkeley, other schools, I mean, I was at UC Irvine for 2 years. I went every Friday they had a book table where I would give away Bible and talk to Jewish people. And every week in March, they have what's known as Hate Fest in UC Irvine. And I was there every year. And 1 year, I went in, and I was wearing my yarmulke. I went in to ask a question, and they were having all kinds of pro-Palestinian people and girls in the hijab and American girl, and it was just strange. And I asked a question, and I got booed. I got booed and insulted. That's all. I mean, I had to walk away because I was a little concerned for my safety. But and that was like maybe 15 years ago. If people don't speak up, if you don't call the school and say, what's going on here? How come you could let that happen? Then it will happen in another school, and then it will move from schools to other organizations. And next thing you know, no Jews allowed anywhere. You know, like I said in the article of my article, Judenfrei coming soon to a town near you. It's on my blog at newantisemitism.com. If we don't speak up, it is going to grow.
Yeah. In fact, it's really when we don't speak up, we're as guilty as the people that are perpetrating these types of crimes. It's like turning a blind eye, which is exactly what happened in the days of Nazi Germany. People just wouldn't pay attention, turn around, close their eyes, be oblivious spiritually and emotionally to the truth of what was really happening. And it is happening now. Do you recall, I think it was 2 years ago, June. I think it was June of 2020. Maybe it's June of 2021. You'll remember. There's the Hamas escalation on the border coming from Gaza against Israel. And then in Los Angeles, it was just down the street. It was on a cafe near Beverly Hills.
The pogrom?
Yeah. Well,
they were like going after the Jews?
They were going after the Jews. And there are two Gentile guys that stood up for the Jews that were there. But we would have seen this, and it was just this hate fest on them. And then there was the synagogue right down the street I'm not sure exactly what street. I think it was on Robinson or something like that, where the Israeli consul's, his home synagogue, got vandalized also. And from what I recall back then, the LAPD would not list it as a hate crime. I don't know if that changed afterwards. But this is the reality. But seeing this in Berkeley is very disturbing to me. Can you walk us through a little bit more of this? And also, by the way, before we go on, I want to remind everybody that Olivier has a YouTube channel, and he has a YouTube channel. So all you got to do is just go to YouTube, type in Olivier Melnick. His name's going to come up, and subscribe to his YouTube channel. And
Olivier Melnick, Today Through Jewish Eyes. Yes, and I have a lot of stuff on there that I cannot cover when we get together, just like that. So yeah, they should visit and subscribe. Thank you. That's of course after they subscribe to yours.
Well, I was going to say that next. I would really appreciate it if you would subscribe and to this channel, even like the video and share it, because it really helps to get the word out there, because we really do. I mean, days are interesting, and there's a lot of work that needs to be done. We're not going to stop until the Lord calls us home. But man, sometimes it's overwhelming. But let's go back to this. So before I start whining. So back in your article, walk us through some of the things. You talked about the Nuremberg laws, for example.
Yeah, see, you basically, when you relate that to the concept of Judenfrei, free of Jews, it was part of a whole agenda, and I divide the Holocaust in the era into four periods of a few years. The first was 33 to it's 33 to 45. So the first is 33 to 38 is the Nuremberg laws, when basically it's all the legislation that's passed, all the laws that are passed to identify who's Jewish and who's not. And by the way, in my office here, I have original documents from that era. I mean, it's people say it never happened. I have original German documents about the lineage of Aryans and Jews. So those things really exist. I mean, not that it would be the only person, but when people say it didn't happen, it just drives me crazy. Then you have the criminalization of Jewishness. You know, the Kristallnacht in November of 1938, where there was a lot of pogroms and boycotts of Jewish businesses, and several hundred synagogues got burned to the ground. Then isolation from 39 to 41, the ghettos, and then finally annihilation, destruction from 41 to 45, the death camps. So this is a progression. Those are the four periods of that comprise the entire period of the Holocaust. And the no Jews, at the beginning it was like, identify who's Jewish, and as soon as we identify who's Jewish, we have to put them aside, put them in ghettos. They're not allowed here. They're not even allowed outside of the ghetto, unless they have a special piece of paper, an Ausweis from the Germans. So right now, as we see what's happening in Berkeley, you could say that this is, identifying the first two steps, really. Legislation. I mean, this is not a U.S. law, so to speak. This is just the bylaws of a U.S. university, but still, it stands on the grounds of that university. Now, mind you, this is not condoned by the whole school. We have to be fair to Berkeley. The whole school does not condone that. It is just some of the law groups within the whole organization at Berkeley that have pushed for that, and of course at the same time pushing for boycott, divestment, sanction, the BDS. So that's. Tom, I don't see it stopping. I see people like you and I speaking against it, doing videos against it, encouraging people to speak up, to call the universities, to call the organization and say you cannot do that. But I don't see it stopping. It will stop when Jesus comes back. But I don't see it stopping. It doesn't mean that because the bully is pushing, we have to ignore the bully. We have to push back. We have to speak up.
You do. And the reason why these types of things increase is because people won't speak up. They won't push back. They won't do anything about it. They won't write letters. They won't make phone calls.
Tom, I wonder what would have happened to my grandfather in 1942 when he was hiding in the basement of my mother's house when she was a teenage. I wonder what would have happened if the man upstairs gave him away to the Gestapo, but the rest of the three buildings, the three adjoining buildings, probably about 30 flats, 30 apartments, all looked behind their shutters going like, I'm not getting involved.
Yeah.
I wonder what would have happened if the entire building would have gone and say, leave him alone.
Yeah. So the man upstairs betrays your grandfather, turns him over to the Nazis, and everybody didn't do anything. And that's the story. Okay. And the same thing, listen, the same thing is happening today. And quite frankly, Olivier, you know, you and I have had a lot of conversations about this. And it's really, I mean, when I look at this, look at the title of the YouTube, is this really happening? It is. And I can honestly say, this is me because I'm also a pastor of a Christian church, that most churches won't do anything about this. I would guess maybe 5% of the churches in America have a pastor that would even be willing to mention anything about this at all. At all. Not to mention how many don't teach prophecy, think it's just a stupid thing. The rapture is a stupid thing. Jesus coming back to Jerusalem is a stupid thing. The Jews having a right to Israel. I mean, that just boggles my mind. Why does every other people group have a right to a particular land? The Jews have no right to the land of Judah.
And even when you take away all the churches that teach replacement theology and you stick to those who don't, within those who don't, you still have a lot who just don't care about prophecy.
Oh, absolutely. They won't say anything regardless. And because of that, they're not going to have any they're not going to have any connection with Jesus. Listen, when you get away, this is what's happened. When you get away from teaching the Old Testament, and you say the Old Testament is irrelevant. No, it is. It's irrelevant to the Christian. It is not irrelevant. So, but that's what's happened in so many churches. And I thank the Lord that He got me started in the Calvary Chapel system. Not all Calvary Chapels teach that way, but a lot of them still do. So you teach the Old Testament, you teach the New Testament. I mean, the majority of churches won't teach any Bible. I've seen them. They hold up a Bible in their pulpit and say, "Here's my Bible." And then they go on and talk for 40 minutes about whatever, And then when it comes to the New Testament, avoid those passages that would shed any light of favor upon the nation of Israel. In fact,
yeah. My first, 40 years ago when I became a believer, my very first pastor and Bible teacher was David Hawking. So 20 years ago,
you got a lot of it.
I got a lot of it. And back then it was like, oh, this is interesting, but I didn't really understand that God was preparing me for such a time as this.
Yeah. So you look at where we are now. So let's go back. So there was that synagogue that was attacked not far from where you live in Texas, about an hour or so away.
Yeah.
So that was about a year ago, was it?
There was this year in January.
Okay, it was January. So it's coming up on a year. So I wasn't that far off.
Right.
So it was coming up on a year. Okay. Did that ever get labeled as a hate crime?
The FBI came on the scene. I was there reporting for our ministry, and the FBI came on the scene, and the local director of the FBI said that this was not a hate crime. This was just a, whatever he called it, but it was not a hate crime. And it was certainly not a crime of anti-Semitism. After all, it was a radical Muslim going after a synagogue on Shabbat. It could not possibly be anti-Semitic. Tongue in cheek. But they came back 2 days later and they said we were wrong. This was a hate crime. So yes, it got labeled. How clearly I don't know, but they backpedaled because it was too crazy for them to stick to what they said. It was obviously a crime of anti-Semitism.
Yeah. So okay, that one did get labeled that way. But then when you see something like a sign "No Jews Allowed," because we're starting to witness this. You and I are both white men, and we're starting to hear about this all the time. No white men allowed.
It used to be $49, so the cost of living is affecting his donation request too. What a crab Paul Begley is, seriously.
In this organization, and most people are like, ignoring it. But the reality of it is this precedent has been set. So, but the devil doesn't change his playbook. What worked in Nazi Germany is coming back. And it's going to continue to progress the same direction, the same type of tactics, the censorship. But the Jews, the enemy knows that the Jews must be eliminated, the enemy of our soul, if he's going to have victory over the Lord. And it's not going to happen. But that's ultimately what's going on, I believe, is a spiritual battle.
It's coming back. I'm looking for a definition here. I have a quote by this guy when I just did a teaching today on the history of anti-Semitism, and I think it fits really well. Jan Kershaw, who's a historian who wrote a great book on the biography of Hitler, he said the road to Auschwitz was built by hate but paved with indifference. And to this, I add, unfortunately, the road to another Holocaust is being rebuilt by hate, but paved with political correctness and apathy.
Oh,
that's where we are.
Yeah, that's exactly where we are. The entire Western world is apathetic, indifferent, and we've entered into this place where people only care, well, I'm not going to get involved. That's their problem. Just, give me food, entertain me. It's a food and circuses world that we've entered into in America. People have been dumped down. We're not taught the truth on history or any of these things. And it's going that way. I mean, when you look at the Jewish people, and we're going to go over to Israel in a minute because I got to get to this thing with Lebanon. What?
We're going to Israel?
Actually, I am. But that's another. But I want to go over to, we got to talk about this gas field because it is unbelievable what's going on over this issue with the gas field outside of Haifa. But I mean, how else can it be explained? It can't be explained logically about the persecution against the Jews and the attempt to eliminate the Jews since their beginning. Go all the way back to Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, and you follow it through there. All the different attempts to eliminate the Jewish people, whether it be Pharaoh in Egypt or with Esther and Haman, and just, right on through biblical history and secular history. Why? Why is there a people group? It's a spiritual attack. That's what it is.
That's what it is. In my definition of anti-Semitism, I say anti-Semitism is a satanic and irrational hatred of the Jewish people. Satanic and irrational. It is satanic because you said it early in the program, Tom. Satan knows what's in store for him, and he knows that when Israel calls, Baruch haba b'Hashem Adonai, blessed is you comes in the name of the Lord, like we can read in the end of chapter 23 of Matthew, when Jesus said, I will not come back until you say, blessed is you comes in the name of the Lord. When that happens, Satan is done, and you know what? Satan is scared. He's scared because he's not the boss of hell. He's going to burn in hell forever.
Yes, he is. People think he's the boss of hell, and they're going to be down there with their friends.
Only in Hollywood he's the boss of hell. Only in Hollywood. But in the movies. But in reality, he knows when the Jews call him their Messiah, it's over. So he's doing everything, and he's done a great job, I hate to say.
Yeah, that is an excellent way of putting it. When the Jews call him their Messiah, it's game over for him, and he knows it. He knows it. Okay, can we shift gears for the next few minutes before we take questions?
Tell us about the gas fields. Tell us about the gas fields.
Okay, so Harbinger's Daily, this is their report. Very good publication. Two-state solution, giving away energy rights. Lapid is damaging Israel in every possible aspect. Okay, that's from Harbinger's Daily, and we know that Lapid he's like, hey, let's divide Jerusalem. Let's make a two-state solution. So
he said it at the UN.
He told the UN, this is what I think we should do. That to me is quite disturbing. All right. Then we have the Biden administration, because what Harbinger's Daily is reporting on, folks, is there's a gas field. I've seen it. It's between Haifa and Rosh HaNikra, right off the Mediterranean, right off the coast there. And I've been there, and that is where I'm going to be in 3 weeks, Olivier, right there. But now what Hezbollah is threatening to do is they've got missiles that are aimed at the gas field, whatever it takes to stop that. They're demanding that they get all the gas, and really, call it what you want, but Lebanon, they have good people that live in Lebanon, and they have very bad people that have massive power there in Hezbollah, the most organized and well-funded terrorist organization on the entire planet. So they're saying, if Israel doesn't give us all of the gas, 100% of it, then we're going to take out that gas field, and threatening war against Israel. And a threat from Hezbollah, should they ever do anything, is really bad. It's a big deal. David Friedman on the gas deal said no one imagined 100% of gas would go to Lebanon and 0% to Israel. So this is something that's actually on the negotiating table with Lapid. This is insane. I mean, how could in my mind, how could this happen? I stood, Olivier, last time when I was in Israel in April, right there in Rosh HaNikra, and I was with David Tal, and I'm looking at the buoy that is the border marker between Lebanon and Israel. So you're looking out there, you see it out there in the water. And he said, it's funny that border right here, the property line, was never a contention, never an issue, until Israel discovered this gas field. Until then, it was never an issue.
Nobody cared.
Nobody cared about it. Israel could have it. Nobody cared about the property until there was gas. So, and now we have everything escalating with Russia, Ukraine, United States, obviously all of Europe. And where's the world's attention? It's going, all these leaders, guess where they're looking? They're looking at Israel going, Israel has all this gas. And here's this also from Israel 365 News. Biden administration pushes Israel to shrink its maritime border to Lebanon. That's the exact same border that I stood there in April and looked at, and I'll stand there again in 3 weeks and look at. I'll send you pictures.
They're trying to legally put the gas field into the Lebanon.
That's what they're doing. Let's move the buoy. Let's just move the buoy just a little bit over.
Just move the borders and let's let everybody. Yeah, so but you know what? I have to say though, this is extremely important, and we need to keep an eye on this. But the other article that you and I were you sent me the article that I thought was fascinating is what's happening in Iran.
Yeah.
And because
are you changing subjects on me?
No.
Yeah, no, you are. Okay, go ahead. No, it is fascinating. Go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I would never dare changing subject on you, Junior.
Oh, by the way, everybody, Olivier is my elder, and his birthday is on Saturday. If you want to send him a special birthday wish, go for it.
And his birthday is
turn off the sound. Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, too late. October 8th, October 10th. Okay,
thanks.
So we're both turning 39. The what's happening in Iran with what seems to be could possibly be the beginning of a people's revolution, and if the way I'm looking at it is that if the regime is toppled in Iran, it could well be. I mean, it might take a while, but it could happen. Then the major the supplier of everything, money and weapons in the Middle East is Iran, basically. And if that turns, then Hezbollah will not have the power that it has. Hamas will not, and in all those different, terrorist groups and terrorist states will not have the finances and the power that they have had. So I think it's connected, because what's happening with the gas field is really bad. But if Iran ends up, we have people on the streets right now in Iran saying death to Khamenei. I mean, you've got to have a chutzpah to say that.
Oh, yeah, you do, because death's going to come to you.
Yeah. Exactly. And so, Iran could go, if Iran goes back, so the good side of the coin is this, that Iran will no longer be in a place of financing terror. The other side of the coin that most people might not see is that this would really set the stage even closer for the Antichrist, because now we have more peace in the Middle East. And it really sets the stage for somebody to come and say, okay, let's sign a peace treaty with Israel. Let's rebuild that temple. And anyway, I'm getting on another subject.
Yeah, next we're going to be talking about red heifers or something. So let me ask you, you just did a video on red heifers. I encourage you all to go over to Olivier's YouTube channel, Olivier Melnick. Just type it in there in YouTube. It'll come up, and he just did a video on it. It's a great video. And I don't know, did you tell anybody on your video where the red heifers came from?
Well, yes, I do, because this is rare when a little small town in the USA might have some prophetic significance. The 5 red heifers went to Israel. They were raised in Rockwell, Texas, which is where I'm from. Or where I live. I'm not from. This is where I live.
Yeah, I thought you were from Paris, France.
Yes, not Paris, Texas. Yeah, Paris, France.
Yeah, so that's kind of cool. Okay. Last, I want to get this story. Yom Kippur is a time for atonement for Israel. You just did a video on this also.
Yes.
And this article is from yesterday from Jerusalem Post. So Yom Kippur, it is this super holy time.
Yes, it is the holiest time of the year. This is the Day of Atonement, the day of Kippur means covering. In biblical days, this is when the priest would go in the Holy of Holies, and then you get the blood of one goat, put it on the other goat named Azazel, and then kick that goat into the wilderness to its death to take the sins of Israel. This is this is a very solemn day. It's not a feast, actually. It's part of the fall feast, but it really is a fast. And from last night to tonight, Jewish people all around the world were fasting, and tonight they break the fast. And what's interesting is that the way I look at the feast, and you and I have discussed that before, and I have several videos on my channel, that recent videos I've done, is that the fall feasts are yet to be fulfilled. And you have Rosh Hashanah, the Feast of Trumpets, and then Yom Kippur, which is today, and then Sukkot, the Feast of Tabernacles, and the spring festivals were fulfilled in the first coming, death, resurrection, birth of the church. The fall feast will be fulfilled at the second coming with the rapture the tribulation, and the millennial kingdom. Now, before people lose their mind when I say this, I did not set the rapture on the day of Rosh Hashanah, but thematically, there's a theme of the last trumpet. I have a lot more details on my video, but there's a theme, there's a connection thematically. It does not mean it has to happen on the day. I mean, if Yom Kippur is fulfilled by the Great Tribulation, which day of the 2,500 days of the Great Tribulation is it going to be on? Because it's 7 years. So, I mean, it's a theme, you know. It's, and the millennial kingdom is a fulfillment of the Feast of Sukkot. So Yom Kippur, the connection is a great tribulation, that the affliction of Israel, and it's an important day on the Jewish, on a Jewish calendar. And it is not a day. I received today an email from somebody saying Happy Yom Kippur. It is not a day when you wish Jewish people Happy Yom Kippur. You can say Happy Rosh Hashanah, you can say Happy Sukkot. You do not say Happy Yom Kippur. It's a solemn day of mourning and affliction of the soul. So it's, but you know, it is a combination of 10 days of awe between Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. And those 10 days is when Rabbi says you have to go back and ask for forgiveness to all the people you think you might have hurt throughout the year between the last Rosh Hashanah and this one. And so yesterday, last night, finished the 10 days of awe when everybody was saying, I'm sorry if I hurt you. And because Jewish people think that God, believe, not think, that God will put their name in one of 3 books at the time of Yom Kippur. He opens books, either the book of the righteous, the book of the in-between, or the book of the wicked. And if you ask for forgiveness to all your friends and the people you might have hurt, God will put you at the very least in the book of the in-between, and you'll be okay for the next year. But if you give your life to Yeshua, if you believe in Yeshua as a Jew, you know, everybody, when they put their faith in the death and resurrection of Yeshua, Jesus, their name gets inscribed in a Lamb's Book of Life for good. It never be taken away. So if your name is in the Lamb's Book of Life, especially as a Jewish believer, then you do not have to look at Yom Kippur as a terrifying time where is my name going to be in a good book or in a bad book. If your name is in the Lamb's Book of Life, it's in the best and only book you want it to be in.
Amen. I could not say it any better than that. With that, Olivier, this is a good place to go and take questions, but I do want to remind everybody, don't forget to turn on your notifications. When you turn on your notifications, then you're going to get notified whenever we have, whether it be a live or a post I've got or something like that. So turn on your notifications. That would be pretty cool. And then also, if you would like and share this video, that would be really good for us too. We would really appreciate that. We have plenty of people watching, not a whole lot of likes. So 600 likes, about almost 3,000 watching. So hey, if you want to like it, it helps to get the word out. It's free. It's free, and it actually gives us some favor with YouTube, which is kind of nice. And then we're also on the app right now, Olivier. So this is the 3rd day in a row we've been live on the app and live doing this. We're able to take the questions on both the app and YouTube. So I'm excited about it, because if all of a sudden YouTube goes down, we're actually on the app. We're also on Roku, and we are on Apple TV all at the same time. So I'm excited about that. Okay.
Yeah, it's exciting. So do you have any questions?
Yes, we do. Let's see. No, I'm good. I got to ask a question.
All the hard questions goes to you, right?
All the hard questions. Everybody, please send hard questions as soon as possible. Sorry, Mary and Stuart, that notifications don't work for you on YouTube. I don't know. That sounds like a YouTube issue, or maybe a phone issue. Okay, ends of the earth. Here's the question. Would the Jewish people accept someone as the Messiah if that person is not Jewish? And happy birthday to Olivier on the 8th.
Oh, thank you. Would the Jewish people accept somebody as the Messiah if that person is not Jewish? I wonder if this question is related to the assumption that the Jewish people are going to accept the Antichrist when he comes to sign a peace.
I wonder how much money he's worth, Diane. He'd be worth a few dollars because he's ripped off the sheep for years, I bet.
Daniel 9:26-27.
Right. Yeah.
When he signs a peace treaty with Israel, which is the beginning of the tribulation, when the Antichrist signs a peace treaty with Israel, he's not actually coming and he's not saying he is the Messiah. He's simply coming to sign a peace treaty and bring false peace, of course, to us, but peace in the Middle East and in the world, and that's what starts the tribulation. So the Jewish people are not going to be looking at the Antichrist. Of course, they won't know he's the Antichrist, but they won't be looking at him as a potential non-Jewish, because he will not be Jewish, non-Jewish Messiah. The other side of that coin is that Jewish people who expect a Messiah would expect the Messiah to be Jewish. He would have to be a Jew.
Thank you. Very good. Real talk right now. Question. Some days, Pastor, I find myself feeling envy for those who have already died and are with the Lord. My envy worries me. What would you say about that? I know what I would say about it. There's a great passage in 1 Thessalonians chapter 4.
Somebody who's envying the people that are already with the Lord?
Already with the Lord, yeah.
Well, you know what? I envy those people too, because they have no more pain, no more suffering. But the Lord knows our days; He appoints our days. A great passage to me is Psalm 90, a psalm by Moses about building your legacy and making the best of your time on earth. But if we're still here, it's because God has a purpose for us to make a difference and to maybe take as many people with us into His presence as we can. That's otherwise He would take you. The minute we become saved, He would just call us to be with Him, like He did with Enoch to some level. But if we're still here, is because God wants to utilize us to further His kingdom.
Amen. And we have hope. When we go, we're going to be reunited, and it will be as if we've never been separated. So,
That's right.
And we want to move forward with joy also at the same time, and understand. Jesus said, when you see these things begin to take place, look up and lift up your head, because your redemption draws near. But what happens, a lot of people, when they don't understand Bible prophecy in the right perspective, you get discouraged. You go, oh, I just wish I was out here. I talk to a lot of people like that. That's
Right.
not the perspective Jesus wants us to have. He wants us to look up, lift up our head with expectant joy, and run the race, be about our Father's business, share the Lord with people.
That's right.
Okay. This question is definitely something for you. Sammy asks, Olivier, how does it feel to be Tom's wiser elder?
It is with great joy that I always put him back in his place and correct his theology.
Okay, which theology did you correct?
Nothing, because I learned from you. I had to backpedal.
I knew. You said it, so I'm going to throw it out there. Okay, question. Let's see.
Hey, Kalia.
Cynthia
Good to see ya.
Castaneda. Are there any Christians in Israel, and do they share the gospel with the Jews? Are there many? Not any. Are there many Christians in Israel, and do they share the gospel with the Jews?
Well, I mean, you can answer that question as
Yeah. But you can answer. I'll let you answer.
Well, I mean, I think you and I will both agree there are many Christians in Israel, and I would say that yes, there are. I would say that some Christians in Israel will be bold with their how they share the gospel. They do it in a way that a Jewish person is going to be receptive. They're not going to go Bible thumping on the streets, but there's also a danger where there are some ministries that have a presence in Israel. I'm not going to give names, but there are some ministries that have a presence in Israel, and they refrain from sharing the gospel because they know that if they did, they probably would not be allowed to be in Israel. I'm just going to leave it at that. And I would say that if you're going to donate to a ministry, a Christian ministry, to share the gospel in Israel, make sure before you donate your money, you call them and say, how do you work my dollars, and do you share the gospel? And it's your money. It's at the time we live in. Your resources can make a difference, but you want to make sure they go to an evangelistic organization.
I would make sure you get it to the right organ. There's some great organizations, and there's some bad ones, just like America. And there are plenty of Christians that are in Israel that are doing a lot of work. One for Israel is one. You've done your testimony on there. They're fantastic. In fact, we have people from there that actually watch our programs, which is really cool. And I'll be seeing them in just a few weeks. But it's they share the gospel. It's a Jewish organization, but they share the gospel with anybody that's there, Jew, Gentile.
Yeah.
There are also Arabs that work that are part of their organization that have been saying Palestinians.
Muslims, yeah, no, they're
They're fantastic.
I've been there, yeah, it's great. They're wonderful.
Lori Saunders, is Pastor Tom going to answer some from here too? This is the app. Yes, I am. And here's the first question. Danny Lombard, what do you think will be the outcome if Israel held a referendum regarding the two-state solution? Is that an answerable question?
I don't know what the outcome would be.
Okay, I'm going to ask you another one. This is from Scott Effinger, also on the app.
Do you have an answer to that?
No, I don't, because it's just speculation, I think.
Yeah, exactly. I would say the same thing. We don't know. I mean, we could be surprised one way or the other.
Yeah, we sure could. We don't know what's going to happen with the election that's coming up with Netanyahu. He could be back in, and that's going to throw back the other way.
That would get some people upset.
It'd make me happy. Okay, Scott Effinger, this is off the app also. Olivier, what is your stance on Isaiah 17, the destruction of Damascus? Is it a historical event or is it prophetic? This is your opinion. You know, I have an opinion, and I understand mine doesn't necessarily agree with everybody's.
What is your opinion? I think it's going to happen.
I do too. I still think it's future. Andy Wood says no, that's already been done away with. It was in the past. It was fulfilled. I don't see it as being fulfilled yet. I believe the destruction of Damascus, Isaiah chapter 17, is still coming in the future. It's going to be destroyed in one night.
There was 1 hour. It's one night.
It's in the evening trouble. In the morning, she is no more.
Okay.
So it could be in 1 hour, but it's just obliterated.
It's fast.
Yeah. So
I think it's future, but it's one of those things where really it doesn't one way or the other it doesn't alter your eschatology.
Yeah. I totally agree. It's not going to alter my eschatology. Whether or not you believe in the Psalm 80, if Psalm 83 is a war or it was a prayer, as most scholars seem to believe, doesn't really matter. What matters is Jesus is Messiah. He came the first time to forgive us of our sins for anyone who would put their trust in him. And he's coming again. And we have hope because of Jesus. And it's keeping our eyes fixed on him. Okay. This says, this is from Denise Decker. Also from the app, I have looked high and low for the relating of the fig tree to Israel. I even asked Pastor John MacArthur, and he disagrees that the fig tree represents Israel. And with everyone looking at the end times and the fig tree, I need to ask you to please give me a verse that points to Israel being the fig tree, a clear verse. Can I answer it?
Please do.
Okay, this is my take. I don't believe when you see the fig tree, and this really bothers people, Olivier, when you see the fig tree in the Olivet Discourse, what Jesus says, you've got to put Matthew, Mark, and Luke all together because it's all the different things that each one of the authors wrote down of the words of Jesus in the Olivet Discourse. So he's primarily focusing on the time of Jacob's trouble, the tribulation, really the second half of the tribulation is where most of it is. Matthew 24, verse 15 is the abomination of desolation. That's the Antichrist demanding to be worshipped as God, and then the Jews start to be persecuted, okay? But when he talks about the fig tree, Jesus had listed many different signs. And he says, when you see it begin to bud, when you see all these things, that's how I think Luke says it, when you see all these things, and he relates all these things to the fig tree, I believe it's a convergence of everything happening at the same time. However, at the same time, none of the prophecies of the second coming of Christ have they're a placeholder for any generation unless the Jews are back in the land, unless they have Israel, unless the persecution is starting up. All the other dynamics, Israel has to be placed where the Bible says it has to be placed. Ezekiel 36, God says, I'm going to bring you back into the land in the last days because my name is on the covenant. I'm going to bring them from the north, the south, the east, and the west. And we know that Israel, can a nation be born in a day, Isaiah says. So we look at that, we recognize, okay, let's say there all these other things were going on right now, or going on 200 years ago, just like they are now. Technology was booming and everything, but the Jews weren't back in the land. They didn't have Israel. Well, guess what?
They're returning. Going back to Lenin, unbelief before
Yes.
the Valley of Dry Bones. That's important. Too.
Yeah, that's also, so that's all happening now. But if all the if tech, let's just put this right now, all the technology and everything, but the Jews weren't back in the land. They didn't have the nation of Israel yet. They weren't returning. Then it wouldn't be you couldn't say this is it. We're on the cusp of the tribulation period or the rapture or these things. But I believe the fig tree, there's some passages in the Old Testament where, like, I think it's in Hosea, for example, might not be Hosea, I might think it's Amos. A fig tree is referenced in a couple of other ones. In a conversation about Israel, there's a passage in the New Testament where Jesus curses the fig tree, and people use that passage to say, see, the fig tree is Israel. I see it more as a convergence of all things. When you see it begin to bud, they're all budding right now, all the signs, but the super sign is the nation of Israel and the Jewish people.
Yeah.
That's my take.
Well, I'm not going to add anything. You know what I just said earlier, that, you know, I correct your theology a lot and I enjoy doing that. I'm not going to do it on that one.
Do you want to?
No. Although you did say something that I did not agree with, which is really,
what is it?
probably not significant in the concept of the fig tree. I don't believe that the verse that talks about the nation being born one day is a reference to 1948.
You know what? I think you're probably right. Now you should just accept that from me because you're my elder, and I think you're right. So what do you think it is?
I think it's coming. I think it's speaking of if you can connect that to Zechariah 12:10, when Israel calls upon the one who they have pierced, and they're reborn as the Israel of God of Galatians 6:16.
You know what? I love that, and from now on, I'm going to use that.
So
I think
audience,
the nation.
I want the audience to know that the elder corrected the junior, but it's not always the case.
You know, I'd rather admit when I'm wrong on that. I think you're right.
And listen, you've corrected me in the past, and you know what? That's what I love about you, Tom. And I try as much as possible to do the same. We have to be, as teachers of the word, we are responsible to a lot of people. We're accountable, and we have to be humble enough to know when we're wrong.
Amen. Amen. Janice Clark, question, Pastor Tom, have you ever prayed at the wall in Israel, assuming the Western Wall? Yes, but I was praying to Yeshua. I was praying to the Lord. I'll be there. I love it. I love taking groups there. You know, you take the men to the men's side and the women go to the women's side. I can't wait. I was just there and I get to go again. You want to know what else? And I'm going again after that. Okay, here we go. Do Messianic Jews, this is real talk right now. Already answered one question from them. Do Messianic Jews have to keep the Sabbath, or are they like us Gentile believers? You're a Messianic Jew.
Okay, we are not like Gentile believers, but we do not have to keep the Sabbath. There are Jews and Gentiles in the body of Messiah, the church, okay? And actually a sign of a healthy church, as far as a church, like an organization like Tom's church, or a sign of a healthy church would be that you find Jewish believers and Gentile believers, all Christians following Messiah, within the same local body. That's a sign of a healthy congregation. But Jewish believers were no longer bound by the Mosaic law. First of all, that nobody could keep the Mosaic law, the 613 commandments, except for Yeshua, the perfect Jew. So Jewish believers do not have to keep the Sabbath. You can if you want. By the way, the Sabbath, we were talking about that before the show started. The Sabbath, there's no such thing as a Christian Sabbath being Sunday. Shabbat has always been from Friday sundown to Saturday sundown. It's never going to change. Okay? It was a day of rest, and then they would meet on the first day of the week to gather and in fellowship. We can meet on any day of the week to fellowship and do church. It doesn't matter. But the Shabbat is always going to be from Friday sundown to Saturday sundown. And if I rest on that at that time, that's perfectly okay. But I don't rest because I have to, according to the Mosaic law. I already rest in Yeshua by His grace, 24/7, every day of the year. So
that was great. I love that answer. That's fantastic. Absolutely loved it. I like to rest on the Sabbath, Saturday, because they just like to rest.
So it's every day is Saturday for you.
Oh, wow, that was mean. Wow.
No,
I hope you have a happy birthday. Hey, listen, everybody, thank you for joining us. Olivier Milnick, go to his YouTube channel, like it, subscribe to it. You're going to be super, super blessed. You're going to learn so much and love it. And you'll get us daily devotionals. And please like and share this. It really does help. And it's absolutely free. Listen, I have a very good update for you all tomorrow.
Is it possible to grow my hair back once it's gone? Absolutely you can. There is no need to worry anymore about receding hairlines or thin.
2023 that Prophecy Watchers is going to have. One of the things that we're... Welcome to the program today. Mano Gonzalez here in studio with an all-star cast, and we're going to be discussing the brand new film Ragnarok. But before we do, I want to remind everybody about the exciting March of 2023 that Prophecy Watchers is going to have. One of the things that we're doing, and we want to invite all of you to do, is to join us in Jerusalem. We are going to be there in the latter part of March, and you can go and find more information about that at visitisraeltoday.com. And it is going to be a great trip. If you have never been to Israel, March to me is the best time to be there. We're going to go to Jerusalem, the Sea of Galilee. We're going to see the coast. We're going to see the beaches. It's going to be extremely awesome. We're also going to be doing an extension trip into the land of Jordan. What's over there? Well, there's a lot of things. One of them is to go see Mount Nebo, where Moses was buried in Deuteronomy 34. We're also going to go see Petra, which is a place that has some prophetic significance. And so just ask you to join us. It's going to be a great time. As I've been there, again, safe. There's no medical requirements of any kind, which again is another opportunity to go while we can. The other thing that we're doing in March is we're going to be having what we're calling the Orlando Prophecy Summit in Orlando, Florida. And you can find information about this Bible conference that we're going to have there at prophecywatchers.com. We're going to have over 15 speakers to join us to talk about current events, Bible topics, and again, to be looking for the coming of our Lord. So that's a pretty exciting time. Join us in that. Well, right now, again, going back to our all-star cast, we have Gary Stearman, we have Josh Peck, and Tom Horn. Welcome, guys.
It's good to be here.
It's good to be here, in my case, especially because I haven't been here for a while and I'm feeling much better, thank you. But this morning I am feeling much better because Tom Horn is here, and I always learn something when Tom Horn comes to town. And I'm looking at a DVD here, the title of which is Ragnarok. And if you haven't heard that name, it's very strange, Tom. What's behind that name?
Yeah, well, it's out of Norse mythology, and of course we wouldn't have used it except for the fact that it's only a plagiarism of what is already told in the Bible, and that is at the end of time there is going to be a cosmic conflict, a war of the gods, Jehovah, Jesus, the armies of heaven even, pitted against these ancient evil entities that were known in antiquity as the gods. Ragnarok in Norse mythology, what does it mean?
Yeah, it actually translates to fate of the gods. So we thought that was just a perfect title for exactly what this movie is about, because it has to do with the tribulation, book of Revelation, and really the fate of the gods.
Now, we're going to be talking about the book of Revelation quite a bit today. And a special part of the book of Revelation, but I should say, now that we're talking about the battle of the gods, that's one of the main themes of Revelation. Mm-hmm. Apollo is in Revelation.
Yes.
What's he doing there?
Right. And interestingly, he's even tied to Revelation 8, which we'll be talking about today, the wormwood object that falls down out of the heaven. But then the very next trumpet that sounds, I saw a star, which is the Greek aster, from which we make asteroid, fall from the heavens. But then it's personalized, and unto him was given the key to the bottomless pit. So it's intriguing what we're talking about here. In the bottomless pit, they have a king down there over them whose name is Abaddon or Apollyon, the king of the bottomless pit, who rises up out. And then some of the offspring of these gods, these insectoids, come up out from out of the underworld to torture unsaved and unredeemed humanity.
It's sci-fi,
Hmm.
or is it? No, it's not, because fi means fiction. This, my Bible, is not fiction. It's going to happen. It's going to be worse, I think, than anybody can possibly imagine.
Yeah, I mean, even Jesus said it's going to be the worst time humanity has ever seen, and if those days weren't shortened, then the world wouldn't survive. So it's going to be really bad.
Now, where do we go from here? The subtitle on this DVD that Tom has created, Ragnarok, Humanity's Last Stand. What do you mean by that?
Well, for me, this actually began, Gary and Mondo, many, many years ago. You guys know a little bit about this, but I died. And I was found dead by my wife, and I was dead for more than probably 15 minutes. Now, in my mind, I was not dead. In fact,
Talia, can you post a link to that,
planet
please?
Earth is to me today. I was standing in front of a brilliant light. Didn't even know how I got there, or really where there was, except that I knew that I was standing before God. I also knew that He had told me some things. He had shown me some things. Like a giant screen had unfolded, or a scroll had unrolled in front of me, on which vivid depictions of a future state, or maybe even a destiny, was playing out in front of me. But then it was gone from my mind, and I couldn't remember what I had seen. And I started saying, Lord, please don't let me forget. Don't let me forget. And He had said to me, it is time for you to go back now, and you will not remember what you have seen. And then suddenly I hear like a thunderclap, and I'm falling backward. Gary, you're a pilot. You'd know more about this than I do. I even said one time it was as if Gary Stearman kicked me out of the side of his Stearman aircraft. But I'm falling down through the sky. I can see this bright light moving away from me very quickly now. Many of this, is actually quite similar to other people who have had near-death experiences, that kind of thing. But I'm falling down, and then the strangest thing happens. And I see the roof of my house literally envelop around me and pop right onto the bed. And I sit up on the bed. I take in this deep breath, and now I realize that I'm back in this reality. And I'm sitting there probably in shock. I'm trying to recall, what in the world just happened to me, or in the other world just happened to me, when I hear weeping. And I turn and I look over, and here's my beautiful young wife, Nita, and she's sitting there. She's got her hands over her eyes, and she's obviously been traumatized. She's bawling her eyes out. And make a long story short, I asked her what's going on, and she explains to me that she had woke up in the middle of the night and that I was dead. No heartbeat, no pulse, no breath, no anything. She's been beating on my chest. She doesn't really know how to do CPR. We're living out in the country. We don't know no such thing as cell phones back then, right? And we didn't even have a rotary dial. We had nothing. Young people watching the show would say, Mom, what is a rotary dial, right? Nothing. So I got to move through this quickly or dominate the whole show. But from that point and forward, over the next few weeks, I keep saying, I'm praying and I'm asking God, I know that you showed me something. It does not make any sense to me. Why would you show me something and then not allow me to remember it? What in the world is the point with that, right? But also, for the first time in my life, I happened to be reading through the Bible, book by book, when I came to Job, chapter 33, verses 14 through 17. And my eyes fall on these words. For the Lord speaks once, yea, twice, but man perceives it not. So there is something about the waking mind that cannot perceive what has happened in that moment. And then it further explains it. In the nighttime, in deep sleep, in slumbering upon the bed, then God opens the ears of the righteous, and He sealeth their instructions within them, to withdraw man from his purpose and to hide pride from man. In the Ragnarok film, I go into explaining what all of that means, which again, we don't really have time for today. But in that moment, even as a baby Christian, this totally made sense to me, that somehow God had sealed something within me that would be important later on. And when it became important in that moment, it would be revealed to me, and then it would make sense. But it was as if it had been imprinted on some part of my soul, some part of my mind. Now, fast forward, for a few times in my life, I've gone back there. and only at the appropriate times. And I can tell you a couple of examples, and the one that the world knows about now happened in 2010. And from that point forward, Chris Putnam joined me, and we start writing the book, became a bestseller internationally, called Petrus Romanus. The Final Pope is here. It's based on the prophecy of the popes. We detail exactly when Pope Benedict is going to step down. Why am I bringing that up now? Is it, to brag about being correct about something that was absolutely beyond mathematically probable? It isn't. It's because in 2019, it happened again. And in April, what is it with April, Gary? In April 2019, I go to bed and I wake up, and this is the most vivid and frankly most terrifying thing I have ever seen. I'm standing on the earth and I'm looking up into the heavens, and I see what at first I think is a giant fiery dragon that is undulating. It's moving back and forth like this, and it's racing towards the planet. Next thing I know, somehow I'm up above, and I can see it's not a giant dragon, but rather it's a giant rock that is spinning as it's moving through the heavens. And the way the sun is playing off the contours of that stone, it only gives it the impression that it's swimming like this, moving back and forth. Now I'm back on Earth. Here's the thing. There's more detail to that, but then I wake up. And I wake up and something very curious happens. I don't know if it was in my head or if it was really audible, but I hear a single word whispered across the room to me, and that is the word Apophis. Now, I knew really nothing about the ancient Egyptian god, but I knew that was the name of a chaos dragon, the enemy of light in Egyptian mythology, named Apophis. From that point forward, I go into deep research. I'm into it for more than a year, but the bottom line for me was I became convinced over time.
What's going on with Mike? Has he gone live yet?
Again, there's lots of stuff in the film, lots of people who are willing to talk to us, astronomers and others. I'm convinced it's coming, but more importantly, and now
he's
you
still
guys can
doing his
talk,
music.
more importantly, I believe that it is the fulfillment.
Yeah, he's
of
still
Revelation
doing his
8.
music,
I
Di.
believe it is the stone known in Revelation 8 as wormwood, which would make that then the middle of the Great Tribulation period. You back up 3.5 years earlier, if you're a pre-tribulation rapture believer, and you're in the midst of the three most important ancient Jewish feasts, which all prophecy scholars have tied to the rapture of the church.
This is a great opportunity for us to take a little break here to see how you can get our monthly magazine. Our monthly magazine has great authors. We do great topics. We're talking about prophecy. We're talking about current events. And I can guarantee you that we will be giving you Psalm 19 updates, not only from our equipment and what we're discovering, but as well as watching Apophis. Again, this is an amazing opportunity for us to keep an eye on things. So take a listen.
Every day, the ancient prophecies of the Bible get more and more exciting as we watch world events come into perfect alignment with the words of the ancient prophets. Examine the pre-trib rapture doctrine taught by the Apostle Paul. Come to a deeper understanding of the giants of Genesis 6 and the real reason for the flood of Noah. Read the shocking things we see coming out of the world of science and technology, mind-blowing advances in transhumanism and artificial intelligence. Keep a close eye for a series of wars coming very soon to the Middle East. The Bible's a supernatural book, and we enjoy covering the fringe subjects and dark corners of Scripture as well. UFOs, the Nephilim, the miracles of the Bible, and so much more. It's a one-of-a-kind publication full of articles that will make you a Bible prophecy expert and prepare you for the future. We have a very special subscription offer for you today. For your gift of $50 or more to support the worldwide outreach of Prophecy Watchers, you can subscribe to either the digital version or the print version of our magazine. And here's the best part. In addition to receiving 12 monthly issues of the magazine, this offer comes with a fantastic bonus: 8 DVDs from some of the leading prophecy experts in the world today. 8 DVDs plus 12 issues of the magazine represents a $200 value, but it's available today for your gift of just $50 or more to support the work of Prophecy Watchers. This offer is available.
They are. Look what you get for $50 off these guys. And what do you get off Paul Begley? A couple of songs on an album or something.
Anywhere in the USA, and we'll ship both the magazine and the DVDs absolutely free.
Oh,
Don't
yeah,
wait
that's
or
good.
hesitate. Call the toll-free number on your screen or visit our online bookstore at prophecywatchers.tv
Just
to take
something,
advantage of this
Joy,
limited time
thanks.
offer. Looking at the future through the lens of Bible prophecy is the entire focus of this ministry. We're motivated like never before by our desire to tell the world that Jesus is the only answer for these troubling times. And we do believe that he's coming back very soon, just as he promised. Partner with us today. Help us take God's message of salvation through Jesus Christ to the whole world.
Well, I hope you take advantage of getting our magazine because again, it's going to keep you well informed on a monthly basis. But guys, and especially Gary here, our foundation here is Scripture, and so as we think about these things that are coming, give us some Scripture. Give us some Scripture that'll give us again a foundation.
Revelation 8:10 talks about the third angel sounding, and a great star falls from heaven, burning like a lamp, and it falls on a third part of the rivers and upon the fountains of the waters. And the name of the star is called Wormwood. We need to talk about that word, by the way. And a third of the waters became wormwood, and many men died of the waters because they were made bitter. Two things. Number one, this is in the tribulation period. And number two, wormwood poisoning the waters. What a theme to visualize. And your narrative, Tom, just I hardly
Lazy's not
read
singing.
while you were talking. Comment on wormwood.
Well, and here's the other thing about wormwood and the waters being poisoned. Is this a pandemic? Could that somehow be connected with the mark of the beast, without which no man might buy or sell, which is also being pushed by the false prophet? Even, by the way, if you're watching this and you're thinking, oh, here's this evangelical being anti-Catholic. No, some of the greatest minds in Catholicism down through time, their biggest theologians believe that the Pope, a future Pope, would either be Antichrist or would be the false prophet. Their theologians believe this, and many do believe that today.
And there are a lot of people hearing Tom who will say, this is not the age of prophecy. You can't prophesy like that. But can you? And why do you? And Tom, I am compelled to deal with this question because I know there are a lot of people who, through fright, anxiety, or whatever, would deny what you're saying a priori. What's your reaction to that?
Well, the fact that he had the previous prediction, that prophecy came true, that leads me to believe that it's probably a good idea to pay attention to this one too. But one thing that's really interesting in the film we show, because a lot of people will get kind of hung up on how does wormwood happen halfway in the middle of the tribulation? Because typically people put the first trumpet right at the middle. Well, what's interesting, and I hadn't thought about this until Tom brought this up, the way he saw it in his vision, this is the way this would work scientifically. You could look at the first four trumpets as all a chain reaction. So, and it all could be this asteroid strike. So the debris that falls from the sky would come first. You have something hitting the ocean, something hitting the land. So either one big asteroid breaks apart, or maybe it's a binary asteroid thing. And so you have wormwood. So the whole thing could be a chain reaction, so it would fit just fine right in the middle of the tribulation like that.
Now, while we're talking here, tell me the part that you played in this DVD. I mean, tell people about yourself.
Oh, okay. Yeah, well, I directed the movie and did actually all of the filming and interviews and everything. I'm in it briefly with Dr. Ken Johnson. We talk about the Essenes, and that there's actually some Dead Sea Scroll prophecies that seem to point to this time period too, between 2025 and 2075, which is really interesting because Apophis has, now there's more than three, but at the time they had three big flybys that Apophis was supposed to do, all within that same time frame, 2025 to 2075. Wow. Yeah. So what are the chances of all these things just coming together?
I got to bring Mondo into this discussion because Mondo loves astronomy. He's a sky watcher.
Yeah.
And what's your reaction to all this?
Well, Gary, I do love astronomy, as you know, and but we're going to do a little teaser. We'll come back to that after the break here because we want to give you an opportunity to see how you can get this, again, very good film Very well done. Lots of great graphics. The film Ragnarok. Take a listen.
We live in increasingly perilous times, just as the Bible predicted for the last days. People are looking for answers, waiting for things to be normal again. But perhaps we've passed that point in society. We believe we're in the final moments of history, and we expect to see more and more chaos in the days ahead. God's judgment on this sinful world is long overdue. Enter Josh Peck, Tom Horn, and Derek Gilbert with one of the most astonishing future events we could ever imagine. A gigantic asteroid is hurtling towards Earth at speeds of up to 45,000 miles an hour. It's scheduled to arrive on Friday the 13th in the month of April in the year 2029. When we read Revelation chapter 8, we see an object that strikes planet Earth and brings great destruction and death. Is this object the Bible calls Wormwood, the asteroid Apophis? Does this represent God's judgment during the 7-year tribulation? It certainly seems to fit the narrative we see in Revelation. Josh's new DVD, Ragnarok, is available for your gift of $25 or more to Prophecy Watchers. We'll also include a free bonus DVD from Mondo Gonzalez, The Heavens Declare the Glory of God, an introduction to biblical astronomy. You may not realize it, but God put his message of salvation in the constellations long before mankind was given the Bible. We've also taken Tom Horn's 2 books on the subject, The Messenger and The Wormwood Prophecy, and packaged them together in the Ragnarok package. When you order these 2 well-researched books for your gift of $60
Oh,
or more,
good,
we'll
finally.
send you the new
Mike's on. Thanks, Di. Actually, history. No, that's me. Hang on. There he is.
Well, now, wait. Is there, I know that's a good thing, but it was never in doubt, was it? I mean, amen. Well, Mike, we're all still.
Okay, the volume's bad at his end. It's not me.
Hey, what'd you do with that ice cream? Since
he paid $50 for that ice cream.
That exclusive interview I did with you at Patreon was so powerful.
Hi, Trace.
Of course, I haven't said anything about it here in an open forum, other than it was powerful. Just my question to you would be, because a lot of folks have listened, how has anything changed in this, good, bad, or indifferently?
Yeah, I think they're spooked a bit more than usual. I think they're spooked. First of all, there are so many things happening. Hopefully tonight we can let people know the dynamic of why things are so spooky. Let's put it that way. Hopefully tonight we can do that.
Amen.
We have building.
Can you hear Paul, Mike, guys?
But I just pray no one underestimates the validity of Putin's resolve concerning Russia's offensive. And believe me, they can back up every single word they're saying with little to no resistance. But it's important that people understand how, and it does deal partially with that missing submarine, the 600-foot long Belgorod vessel that was spotted in the cold waters. But there's a fact behind that. A lot of people say, well, they only built one. No, they didn't. They built 2. That is the longest vessel that's underneath there, and for good reason. It carries enough to really destroy the Earth.
600-foot long nuclear submarine, and I understand that. So there's 2 of them. One's missing. I'm going to say I would hope we could figure out where it's at. Am I right by saying, now this was a report I seen earlier in the week, that this thing could create a nuclear or what they call a radiation tsunami. Can you explain that?
Yeah, first of all, Russia, everybody looks at Russia in the public eyes. They're looking at some of the ships that are rusty, some of the operations that were taking place when Russia in 2000, I believe it was, 18, they tried to repair part of one of the carriers, and that didn't go too well. Well, Russia has abandoned most of their fleet. Why? Because they've been building monsters, submarines in the ocean. That's a big problem. I'll tell you how big of a problem it is. Every single admiral understands that if somebody, if anything goes overboard on a ship, it's going to hit a Russian ship, right? I know they're down there. We have cables that surround America, China, the borders underneath are America and Canada, and they have sensors on them. So when some heavy pressure hits some of those cables, more than what a whale could cause or a school of whales, we can detect shadows, right? Right now, there's an estimate right now that we probably have 16 miles out from every single military base is at least 2 or 3 subs, Russian subs, that we can't do anything about, right? So it's really like hide and seek. And we know for a fact from satellite photos and dump releases that Russia has actually dispatched some of these things, a lot of these things. We're talking about since 2015. So Russia right now, I know it's a bold statement, but the ocean underneath the waters is Russia's domain, right? Most of Russia's money has been put into the underwater domain to control the underwater domain. Of course, America has, land or continental domain and some airspace domain. China has the other portion of the fleet, which is above the waters, right? And we know the count of ships they have. They're not going to release that number, but it is of this massive concern, not to mention Russia has the largest nuclear weapon on the planet.
What is that like? What is the Russia's?
That's the, they have people should know about the AN-602, which is that Alpha November 602 is a SAR bomba. SAR bomba, that's what it's called. It's the most powerful device ever deployed. It is a powerful nuclear bomb, right? It caused the biggest explosion in history. And they have lots and lots of those. Lots of those.
How do they now? How do they deploy them? I mean, are they?
They have 2 ways. This Belgorod submarine, it actually has a delivery system where these drones can be released and carries that same warhead power can be released underwater. Now these are drones that can go on 2, 3, 4-year missions, however long it takes, unmanned missions. And the only thing we have to counter that is the PALS system, which spots erratic behavior of manned or unmanned submarines, and they send out the sub hunters for further inspection to go and get them. But they could essentially, if Russia wanted to, Putin wanted to, he could destroy the whole surface of the planet. He really could.
So so that means, is that why in today's big news was the United States is stockpiling massive, I mean, I don't know how many $1 billion of anti-radiation drugs. This isn't good, Mike. I mean, we've never done this before, have we?
There was one time, but I'm not sure what they printed. But if people knew what the inventory was, they have a declaration on the inventory as of last weekend when we had a problem. They had to get these materials, logistics, these we have to get those distributed. I believe that only one purchase reservation was published. That's it, not the other 6, right? If you had, because it will take for everybody in the U.S. who was of importance, you're talking about at least $700-800 million worth of medication, right? And of course storage and transportation, all that stuff. That's a pretty big one. So knowing them, they probably released, or somebody got a hold of something that reflected maybe 1/4 of what the actual cost was.
As folks, just so you know, I'm sorry about audio if it's not quite exactly right. I'm on the road, and when I'm on the road and Mike's on the phone, this is the best I can do with that, okay? But I can hear Mike pretty loud. He's coming in pretty good here, so I'll try to tone my voice down to be about equal to his, okay? So Mike, we're looking at this anti-radiation drugs. You're telling us they've got huge bombs. They got the missing nuclear submarine. And then Kim Jong-un starts pushing buttons and sending missiles over top of Japan and even threatening South Korea. How tense is that getting?
Well, it's pretty tense. That's not, it's not like normal situations. And keep in mind, North Korea has the largest stockpile of biological chemical agents on the planet.
Wow, I didn't know that.
So suppose this missile they fired was full of a chemical weapon. They could have essentially contaminated, the whole of Japan. They really could with one shot. That would have happened. And so, all of what we're seeing is coordinated. And this is why Chinese vessels have been spotted in disputed waters, right? And of course, it's a bad situation because we're in the middle of a political nightmare as well, right? Of all times in history, the country needs to be unified very quickly because there's not much time left. They're gonna play around with policy and push Putin to a final decision. They're gonna give him an ultimatum. Pastor Paul, I don't see that coming out too well because even right now here's the word Putin. Some people are fleeing Russia, correct? He calls them traitors, right? If you were going to launch some type of large assault, wouldn't you want all the traitors to go out of your country?
Yes, I think I would.
Okay, so all these people fleeing, and then you have people taking sides, either with Zelensky or Putin, but they're missing the point. This is a global incident. This is escalating far beyond the borders of Russia and Ukraine. And it's becoming quite serious to the point where you have Israel, who is now about to take a leadership role in some of the defensive measures concerning this. Because remember, there's a naval port right above them. Turkey, of course, are going to position themselves. But we're not talking about posturing. No. We're talking about air defense. We're talking about ground defense, strategic planning, lots of coordinating parties have been on the phone. I mean, the traffic has been unbelievable. And everybody is preparing to mitigate.
Hey guys, what if that missing submarine is the submarine that took Gabriel's Ark from Mecca to the Antarctic? I bet that's the one that's gone missing.
Radiation with their citizens. Everybody is doing that.
Wow. Well, with this and the panicking and the maneuvering, I think we talked about this last week some. Every nation's moving their military assets everywhere. I mean, is this really what's happening in Europe? I mean, what's going on in Europe? How are they dealing with all this?
Europe is in bad shape. I think that people have picked up that they're essentially going to be high out to dry. Winter's settling in, and a lot of people are doing desperate things in Europe. As far as a citizen perspective, it's starting to get pretty rough there. Right? People actually start, as far as a citizen perspective, it's starting to get pretty rough there. Right?
Okay, that's not me, that's them.
Actually start as far as having some pretty bad fallout. Of course, Iran and what they're doing, they're changing their regime. This Iran is because they have a tighter relationship with Putin. There's a lot of underground governmental individuals who are about to surface, right? Everybody topside except Putin that people see they could potentially be replaced very quickly, right? This normally happens during a large transition. And what it looks like globally is that everybody is preparing for some type of incident, some type of happening, right? Because they have replacement personnel prepped and ready. This could be, this could really be one of those times that people have underestimated what will actually happen. And then the inevitable takes place and it will escalate from there. We've already gotten to the point where nuclear weapons are being talked about. 5 years basketball, 5, 6, 7, 8, 7 years we talked. I was on your show one time and I said basketball is going to come a time when they start talking about nuclear weapons again. But this time it's going to be for real, but people are not going to take it seriously.
No.
And look where we are. Look where we are.
I remember you saying that, and that's exactly where we're at. And they still don't take it. Yeah. Do you think, Mike, they won't take it for real until there is a detonation?
Well, here's what's bad. In the higher echelon, right? Higher echelon individuals, they are taking it serious. But they're forbidden to communicate how serious the situation is. They're still doing the posturing thing. If there was ever a time when they would, tell the public that this is what you do in the event of a nuclear explosion, kind of like what New York did. This would be that time to get people's minds sober. The threat we face is real. Basically, I know people hate to hear this, but Russia commands the oceans, pretty much. Now, no, obviously, somebody's going to hear this and say, no way, because they may not know what the actual situation is. But for the last 28 years, Russia has taken just about all of its money and invested that money in submarines, in SAR bombs, right? In RS-28 Sarmat weapons platforms. They have 100 megaton nuclear warheads packed in submarines going around all over the place, and they're very difficult to find. Even the admirals are saying that, these territories, like we have 12 miles outside, at 12 miles is that mark of our sovereign waters in the USA. That's been penetrated time and time again. Russia has left, they call them presents, where they would leave something from the sun at the bottom of the Gulf, right? We pick it up and it can only come from the submarine. So they leave these old tags saying we've been here. We've been here outside of Florida twice this year, off Norfolk, Virginia, right? Obviously, there were 6 shadows there. And so we're facing this cat mouse game in the ocean. But Russia is heavily vested in this. They have the best scientists developing some of the stuff down there. And obviously it's working. Plus, they have a drone army full of that are unmanned submarines that are autonomous. So they carry out missions based on objectives. And they will, adjust their programming based on many different parameters. So, this is a very real situation. I suspect nobody's going to get a warning that something is about to happen. When you have a situation like this, accidents happen. Accidents will happen. Somebody's going to get that call. They're going to misinterpret an order. Somebody's going to key in something that's wrong. And there's going to be some type of military accident, which will obviously escalate into something larger. Well, because we have automated defense systems, right? It doesn't necessarily have to be human interaction. Case in point, I'll give you an old.
Guys, the best channel to find out what's going on with the Russian war and that is Redacted. I'll put it in the thing, in the chat.
System, the Patriot missile system.
Yeah, yeah.
We have those. We have something like that all around the U.S. They have them in Europe. All allied countries probably right now have them, except for a couple of countries. It does not take a person to intercept a missile. The system intercepts a missile. It takes a person to lock out the system so it does not intercept it. In case but it can tell the difference between a missile, a bird, a bullet.
Yeah, Diane, they're by far the most comprehensive on what's going on with Russia.
ICBM, chemical weapon, biological weapon, it can tell those differences. And it launches at Mach 2.5, it's going to intercept this target like Iron Dome. And, but these are automated systems, right? These are automated. It's not, somebody's not sitting there pressing a button when they intercept missiles. No, it does that with autonomy.
Okay.
So you load those things up, turn on the radar, and they go to town. Well, we have offensive weapons like that too, that cannot be locked down without presidential powers. In other words, imagine a system, an offensive system, that if it detects a threat to a certain scale, it's going to initiate a preemptive launch. We have systems like that. Russia has systems like that.
Wait, time out. Like that. Are you saying it was so? Are you saying are those turned on? I mean, is it possible?
Yes, there are. Yes.
So our systems could launch a preemptive strike without needing to check with anybody else?
If the interpretation of war or something like that, right? But see, I'm always thinking of glitches. Mankind is not perfect, and what we make is not perfect. No matter how many redundant systems you have behind it, you're going to have maintenance problems. You're going to have code errors. So what would happen if one of those errors got beyond, got right to the launch mechanism? It can actually, you have machines right now that can tell the Congress or set certain military individuals and redirect them anywhere in the world at a moment's notice, right? Because humans can't respond that quick. Communications could be cut off or something like that. So we have automated systems that will initiate protocol if that happens. Right now, we have automated systems that do that. With the advent of artificial intelligence, these systems have become more sophisticated, yes. They have fail-safes, yes. But accidents happen. Misinterpretations happen, right? And so we're in those days. What people don't know is that there's always an error. Always an error. There's always something that somebody just barely got to and stopped real devastations. So we're in that time, and the more complex theater gets, or these conversations, these aircraft that penetrate each other's airspace. Of course, we won't send anybody to Russia's airspace because it's locked down now. State Department will not let any flights into certain parts of the airspace in Russia. That is locked down permanently, so that's not going to happen. But they do penetrate our airspace, right? We have a drone highway right above our heads. It's active right now. It's been active for the last 3.5 years. We have patrols. We have autonomy drones that are autonomous that do patrols, and they carry armaments. So we have all these different mechanisms and platforms, and something is bound to take place. There's too much functioning right now. They've never turned this much on. Let's put it that way. They've never turned this much on.
Let me ask you this question. There's what we've been hearing. There's a thing called a red alert warning for the West Coast. I don't know if that's actual terminology, but is the West Coast more vulnerable to a Russian attack than the East Coast? And is there such a thing as a red alert warning?
China on the West Coast. China dominates places like Japan, right? China does this. We know where their ships are. We know where their patrols are. We know where their most of their subs are, and they dominate the West Coast. The East Coast, Russia is dominating parts of the East Coast, right? As far as their subs penetrating those areas. So a lot of those subs are off the East Coast. Remember, it's only 12 miles outside of the continent, and those are sovereign waters. So you can have subs sitting 12 miles off our coast, and they can actually get us. Same thing with China. They have a lot of ships, a lot of submarines, a lot of activity, which is why we're on constant patrol. They also China is also surrounded Australia, so they have a lot of equipment buzzing around Australia. So they have I tell you, they have almost a dominating domain control of the oceans right now, under the water, not atop, but under the water, which is the most dangerous place they could have control. They could effectively shut down a lot of communications because we have underground cabling, which means that's an entire redundant system taken out by a submarine, because we have a lot of underwater cables, lots of underwater cables. And so we're basically in that situation, but on the West Coast, that will be China's.
Okay.
China. 2016 or 2018 basketball, there were a group of admirals that printed locations of submarines for Russia, for China. That was 2018. That's about the most recent intel a civilian can get. But they had a pretty decent map of activity, naval activity of both China and Russia, right? So if you can, if anybody retrieves that, that will give you a good idea as to where things are right now, because China has only increased its population of certain areas, and Russia has only, well, they probably doubled their fleet underneath the waters.
Folks, we got Mike around the world joining us here tonight, and I think this is some very critical information. The world is holding its breath. The U.S. government is about billions of dollars of anti-radiation pills, and we're hearing more and more and more about a potential nuclear strike of some sort. Mike, let me ask you this question. We're going to move to another subject, but Russia. Okay, so you've explained a very powerful Russian position. Yet the media keeps telling us that Russia is struggling, that Russia's soldiers are running away, that people don't want to join the army, that Russian has defections, and that their army has got to the point where they're drafting daddies, guys older than me, and that they're recruiting them out of from the Chechens. They're telling the Belarus government they got to send soldiers. So is that just propaganda, or is there some validity?
Part of it is, but keep in mind, okay, the greatest military asset Russia has right now is underneath the ocean, right? That's the greatest military asset. We're not going to have it. There's not going to be a ground invasion in Russia. That's not going to happen.
No.
Manpower is not going to solve the problem, right? I'll tell you what will likely happen. This is just my opinion. Russia is not closing their borders right now from people running away. Other countries have, but they're not doing that because Putin does not like traitors. He does not. So when they run away into certain areas, he knows very well when he decides to push the button, they're going to go with the explosions and those out there. And that's a gross oversight of most, because they're not taking Putin seriously. They've been warned by experts. Do not underestimate the resolve of Putin. This guy's crafty. He doubled his undersea force. He doubled that in less than 5 years with all the sanctions and everything else. So if he can do that with submarines, and he's got the Status 6 Poseidon weapon, Sarmas and everything else. If we can do that, developing some of the most powerful nuclear weapons on the planet, and nobody rivals Russia as far as nuclear armaments.
Right.
And we know they have several weapons they have not disclosed that are of unbelievable yield, because you can't call them nuclear weapons. You have to call them something else, because they have achievements that are not released to the public. And you have other countries right now trying to solve a problem that Russia has already solved, right? Nobody else has solved this problem. Russia has solved it, but they're not sharing it. But I suspect that same technology is in a warhead. And if it goes off, that's just not going to be good. That means they can shrink something like take the AN-602, which is a very large ICBM and warhead. They could shrink that to the size of a school bus, and it would do twice the damage. So that's a city killer, right? That's a city killer. So we're facing some very serious things, but I think they're grossly underestimating it. They're not going to warn. How can you warn the populace of this? Give the atmosphere of people. Because if you start talking, if any politician talks about war, they're going to lose their jobs by way of public scrutiny, right? In the West. So they can't do that. If any news media comes out and they attempt to warn anybody, people will demand that they be canceled, right? So we have cancel culture. They don't want to hear that stuff. They just don't want to hear it. They don't want to deal with it. And so this is that time where most people do not suspect it. They don't suspect some type of attack. And it's going to be that likely time we have. Well, now Christians do, but we represent a small part of the populace. Believers in Christ are always on watch for prophecy. The rest of the world is oblivious. they're just wondering about who's going to get elected here and there. They're still talking about these domestic issues, and they don't understand that something larger is on the horizon.
Amen. All right, Mike, let's shift gears just a little bit here because Hurricane Ian did some serious devastation, of course, to Fort Myers, to Sanibel Island, to a large swath of Florida. And you told us that that's not the end of the storms. To watch out, that more were coming. We do have one. It looks like by tomorrow morning will be Tropical Storm Julia, and it's in the Caribbean Sea right now. And it looks like it's headed toward Nicaragua and Honduras. Maybe it's going to do a lot of rain and damage. Should we look for any more, or is this thing going to wind up?
Oh, yes. The waters, since Ian has left, the waters have heated up. They've gone up temperature again, right? So coming off Africa near right below Morocco, there's a flow that's starting to form tropical depressions. Those depressions are going to likely build. They're going to build into something else, and that if they build, the North Atlantic has somewhat of a sustained couple of vortices up there that will push this storm right below Cuba, or could be right over Cuba, right into the Gulf, right? Because we also have, when you're dealing with right above Venezuela, we have high hot airflow that will push it right up into the Gulf region. So I'm watching a storm that just, designation 12, that just came off just came from Africa's forming. It's a tropical depression. I believe that the winds right now are 35 miles an hour sustained, gusts of 45, but it's building. It's been pretty consistent, but now it's hitting that superheated water, those hot water anomalies. And so we could have some issues out of that. Now, by the way, looking in the North Pacific, I believe there are 8 storms down in the North Pacific. So who knows what those good for?
Yeah, Talia, over the weekend, they're expecting a lot of flash floods. We've had more waterfall this year than the whole time we've been keeping records. And this year's only into the beginning of October. And now we're to get a really bad, because apparently it's El Nino. It's the 3rd year of flash floods. And we've been copping it bad.
That could be the formation of low pressure systems, which will eventually form into, your tropical type and go up in, strength as the water's warm. Because when Ian left, it has such a massive effect on water currents because of 2 high pressure systems sitting above it that were halfway developed, but it's gone now. And so the cold water is effectively stopped. Hot water is coming up from the southern hemisphere. It's going to give these storms energy. And I just suspect that one will go right up into the Gulf.
So is Planet X, or the effects of it, or binary system, let's say, which is affecting the sun, we hear that there's going to be some powerful CMEs that's going to hit the Earth probably tomorrow and Saturday. This seems to be just a continuation. It doesn't seem to be backing down. Will the sun get more volatile? Is that also what's causing the heating of the Earth, the core of the Earth, and the heating of the waters in these storms?
Absolutely, not just Earth, though. All the planets out there, they're altering, they're changing at the exact same time. So, I think that's why they backed off this global warming issue, saying that people were responsible for it, except for your hardline, tree huggers. But no disrespect to any tree huggers out there. I'm just saying that nobody's on Mars, nobody's on Venus, nobody's on Mercury, and all these other planets. So we're actually feeling the effects of the sun. Something is agitating the sun, altering its chemistry. And as this continues, the sun is just beginning. A serious look at the chemistry in the sun means that it could go up in strength at least 120% within the next 3 or 4 years.
Wow.
Yeah. So the intensity of the sun it's been dormant and calm, very stable, right? Very stable. Everything has been very stable. It's not going to be stable for too long, and it will cause massive volcanism on the Earth. The sun will eventually lead to massive volcanism on the Earth.
So we can expect if the sun's going to get, we're going to see 120% increase. and massive volcanism. In other words, we can expect some serious volcanoes to really start going off. Which doesn't that affect everything? I mean, that puts a lot of soot in the air, a lot of
Yes, it does.
debris.
Yes, it does.
I mean, they're saying. I just saw where they said that the massive volcano Tonga put 50 gazillion tons of hot steam into the atmosphere, which is going to really affect our planet. I don't know which way it affects it. Can you help us with that one?
I was going to reflect that. No, Alan calls greenhouse gases to go right back down to the surface, causing further damage as far as our ecosystem goes. That'll cause quite a bit. But and that's just, I'm glad they said that, because think of the ash one volcano emits. Human activity cannot compare to a volcano. There's some pretty big ones. One of the biggest volcanoes in the universe, in the solar system, is right here on Earth. One of them, we have two massive giant volcano systems here on Earth, and they are the biggest in the solar system. And in fact, it'll make Yellowstone look like a pinky finger compared to a house. So that's kind of massive force you're looking at. And one of them is like a direct tunnel straight down to the core of the Earth. Right?
Well, where's this at?
The one big one that's starting to show activity is Tamamasi. Tamamasi is right off Japan.
Right. Yeah.
Which, in all honesty, that's why if I would have everybody leave Japan, but they're not going to do it. They just won't do it.
You would evacuate the entire island nation of Japan.
Wow.
Get everybody off.
Thanks, Talia.
Because it's right there at that volcano's rim, and that volcano has never done anything, but now it's starting to wake up. It's going to be too much activity. Now, mark my words. Japan will shake. It's going to shake violently. Not violently, right? Real violently. I suspect that when that shakes, it's going to scare people in California. Then, after a little while, because it will take a while for that activity to actually hit California, they're going to say, oh, it didn't get us. Then they're going to start shaking, because the coast plate is not going to hold together, right? Then that will go. So I suspect Japan is going to be the biggest indicator of global instability anybody will ever see. Plus, they've already done the surveys. There are cracks. It's almost like a vertical fault lines forming underneath Japan all the time, right? But you can't tell anybody that, right? Because even with the proof that they have, who can they tell? You cannot move a nation. And so in that case, the only thing you can do is monitor and make sure you're not there when it happens, because you can't move all those people. That's just not going to happen.
So glad my son and my daughter-in-law and my granddaughters got out of Japan. They're in North Carolina now. Thank God, God's country. But anyway, yeah, I'm concerned about the people of Japan.
Okay, Talia, glad you dropped in. Good night, sis.
Taiwan, will that affect Taiwan as well, and China?
Yeah, it'll affect everything. Now, China is in a hardened place, a very hardened place. It's almost like they're sitting atop miles of granite, right? But I also know this, basketball, that before that takes place, there will be a foreshadowing. There's going to be some bad events, right? I believe they'll all point. Now, if it happens, if they have some bad geological events, it's going to point towards a bigger event. I don't believe that God will ever just, surprise, you're dead. He doesn't work that way. He always foreshadows everything with something. For example, before California started going through any of these problems that they're having right now, right? They're having a lot of problems. They had all these fires that started forming.
Yeah.
All these fires. And eventually, those fires are still going. A lot of people they said, well, we can't rebuild. We're getting out of here. And they did. And I believe those are foreshadowings of larger events. Because if God wanted us to go somewhere, right, how would he tell us to move? We wouldn't listen to him. We'd always say, well, that couldn't have been him. He wouldn't have told me that. Unfortunately, we live in a time where things will be shaken up quite violently.
Are you concerned about New Madrid fault line? I mean, it's been over 200 years, or not to worry about it. What's your thoughts?
You know what? I make people mad when I say this, but no, I'm not. I'm concerned about some of the new fault lines that are formed.
Okay.
Like the one that goes right behind New York, the one in Virginia. That's not the new Madrid, but it is close. Some of the new ones in Colorado, very concerned about that. Two of the fault lines that are in the Grand Canyons, very concerned about that because they're going to give way. They'll eventually give way based on some of the surveys. So yeah, we have new cracks in the earth that it's almost like, I don't know, due to political noise, some of these geological facts are just not being shared, or somebody's under penalty if they do share them, because we have a very unstable planet. I believe the only thing holding this planet together right now is faith. I really do. There's no way some of these faults have not given way yet. There's no way the coast plate has not cracked in a million pieces. There's no way. It's too much pressure down there. But it won't last. You know, it's not going to last forever. These things will begin to happen. New constellations, people will see. But even after that, even after they see a brand new constellation, people will get used to that and go back to business as usual. Guaranteed they'll do it.
So is it your opinion, Mike, that people just ignore prophecy because prophecy is, you know, talks about apocalyptic events, like second coming of Christ, and the end of their world that they're accustomed to? And is that why people also don't like to hear warnings of anything? They just don't warn me about anything. Keep that away from me. Is it just human nature? What is this?
I think it's two things. Well, first of all, Satan is always working. He didn't take the break, number one. So if he can have a person look at anything that will cause them to doubt prophecy, he'll do it, right? Prophecy is a promise to those who believe. Prophecy is a threat to those who don't believe, right? But when you learn prophecy and you get excited about the coming of the Lord, but you don't really know why you exist, people lose their momentum.
Wow.
Because they have issues in the world. We do things that sometimes it works, sometimes it does not. People get tired and worn out. There's a remedy for it, of course. But people get tired and worn out because here it is, because their plan is not working, right? I have I'm just a layman, but here's my remedy for that. Don't live for yourself anymore. Live for somebody else. I've always found most of my motivation in living for somebody else. If I trust in the Lord, then He will take care of me. I need not look after me, but I do need to look after somebody else. And I found that when I do this, because we could easily die for those we love, right? We could die for those we love, but it's very difficult to die for yourself, right? It's just like a lot of people say, well, I'm sure the Lord will protect that person. I'm just not sure He'll protect me. So if a person will focus their love on somebody else, something amazing happens. They're motivated to continue to do that. Plus, they learn how to love themselves. I also believe people don't know how to do that. To love a child is to stop a child from ingesting poison, from getting to items they don't want. But Jesus gave a command to love ourselves. To love yourself is not to pamper yourself. To love yourself is to have discipline. Right?
That's good.
We don't have self-discipline, so we're not loving ourselves, but we do love other people. We're kind of backward as believers because we still suffer with worldly philosophies and raising men. But that's a big one. But if a person loves themselves, they say, nope, I'm not doing that because that's not good for me. I'm not doing that because I'll get in trouble. I'm not doing that. They'll have that same care for themselves as they would for somebody else. And Jesus gave that command to love your enemy as you love yourself, but to love your neighbor as you love yourself. So that He didn't request it; He commanded that. That's a command. And but we, in that lack of keeping it, we lack self-discipline, right? Because we just didn't know how that worked. We didn't see it that way.
Amen.
But prophecy, people get tired of, Pastor Paul, they're always looking for the next biggest thing.
Yeah.
And Satan did that, right? Right before the fall of every single nation, historically, people, they had the same attribute for themselves. They got tired of the mediocre stuff. They needed something bigger and bigger the next time, something bigger. And when something bigger happens, it will last for a couple of days, just like Hurricane Ian, right? It did its damage, it passed. Everybody's looking for the next biggest thing. Nothing holds their attention anymore.
No.
And so because of that, it's almost just like the rains of the flood of Noah. If it started sprinkling, people said, oh, it's okay, just move to higher ground. Right? Oh, it's thundering and raining. Oh, no problem. We'll just go to higher ground. They won't pay attention, Pastor Paul, until they have nothing to stand on. That's when it hits.
Wow. Wow, that's
But
right.
we need not do that. We don't suffer from that lack of belief. We just sometimes I've noticed something. When we neglect each other, that's when we suffer. Keeping our flame lit, understanding prophecy, because it's almost like the care of the saints. When they stop caring about each other, they can't hold on to prophecy. They can't hold on to promises. Their excitement level goes down, and it starts to reflect in everything. But if they can put their attention back to their brothers and sisters in Christ,
Amen.
get away from violence, but also be sober. Like politics, forget about pointing. Let's get up there and do something about it.
Amen.
We're put in this world to be active, not bystanders. Right?
Amen.
We're not to watch everything blow up, fall apart. I think due to a lack of that, and due to intimidation from Satan, because we're raised that way, we kind of sometimes we back off, and the Lord's not coming fast enough because we don't like this world. Right? We get kind of stuck in ourselves. But if we can redirect that at any time, but the Lord's going to help us out, because troubles are coming. The heavens are going to change, right? Big rocks are coming from the heavens. Things are going to start burning up.
Wow.
There are going to be larger volcanic eruptions. I was reading in Isaiah, Pastor Paul. Oh, something I want to share. I can't do it right now. I don't have enough time. But in Isaiah, it describes. It describes a volcano went on.
Yeah.
Lava was flowing everywhere, and that the owls settled there. Well, guess what? After a volcanic eruption, you know what? The first animal that settles in a place where there's been a volcanic eruption is an owl.
Why?
And it's right there in Isaiah.
Yeah.
It's right there in Isaiah. So, and that's a prophecy of what will happen in many different places.
We're going to see more owls and set in different. We're going to see different things. Changes are going to happen. In other words, Isaiah 24 tells you about a lot of things going to happen in other parts of Isaiah. Okay, Mike, let me ask you a question now. There's some people have asked this question, and they've said, Pastor, would you please ask Mike about this? You know, the Project Bluebeam was something that we heard about years ago. But is there different technology, or is the Project Bluebeam type technology advanced that could use for great deception on humanity? Or is this something not even concern ourselves with?
There's something else already at work that's working. They don't need project. A counterintelligence op, right? Counterintel op is when you point everybody's direction to something that seems important, all the while you're doing something else. And everybody should keep in mind that from the time the Project Bluebeam, that this document was leaked or people found out about it, some of it started to have a life of its own, right? But there's another technology. They don't need Bluebeam when they can go directly into your head, right? Psychology is a psychology without technology has been a very powerful tool.
Psychology without technology. They can go directly into my head. Tell me what you mean by in my head.
Psychology without technology has formed our civilization. And when we were growing up, how many times did the world say something was good? The world says the opposite of what God says. Here's what the world says, Pastor Paul, that it's your world. You make of this world what you want to do. That's not what the Lord says.
No.
That's psychology. All educational books go through a psychological field.
Brainwashing.
They have to be approved and given to people, right? That's just psychology. But look at the results of psychology. People absolutely believe there is no God, right?
Yeah.
People absolutely believe there is no Jesus.
Yeah.
There are religions upon the earth. This is just with psychology. So if you had technology to augment thoughts in somebody's head, for example, in the 70s, right? During the 60s and 70s and during the Cold War, they had technology where they can speak directly into your head. Directly into your head. Now they can do that from up to, I'd say, about 1,500 miles away, right? We have triangulation through cellular phones, which can absolutely tell exactly where you are, right?
Yeah.
They can aim a device towards anybody, I mean anybody, down to the square millimeter, and they can actually speak directly into your head. How do they do this? Frequencies cause the bones in your head to vibrate. It sounds like a voice. They can influence emotions, stimulate chemistry in your body to cause you instant rage, instant calmness. Now, if you heard something on the television I'll tell you how it works. You see a commercial on TV, right?
Yep.
That commercial seems benign. Yeah, it's no big deal. But then all of a sudden, after seeing that commercial, you get a sick feel, right?
Yeah.
And through that sick feeling, you psychologically or not really consciously, you associate that sickness with that thing you saw on TV. And so the fact is, when you see that thing on TV, you're going to be reminded of that sickness, not wanting to see what was on TV. They did this politically plenty of times in the past, and people didn't even know about it.
So it's a type of brainwashing through visualization and manipulating your mind.
If you can reinforce physically in the body a sickness, something that does not feel good,
yeah,
with anything a person sees or hears, you can cause an emotional association for or against, and it is powerful. Let's go a step further though. What if they have found out how to implant things or send something to your visual cortex? Then you would see it.
Wait, okay. So in other words, through some type of an injection or some type of
No, from a distance.
No, oh, from a distance? They could put something in my cortex. They could put something in my cortex from a distance to cause me to see something that's not really there.
Well, just like a loud sound, right?
Yeah.
A loud sound is vibration. You pick it up in your ears. Your ear interprets that vibration as the sound you heard. Correct?
Yeah.
Well, they found out your eyes work the same way. They can send signals out that the brain will interpret, right, as colors, shapes, all sorts of complex things. And because you have a memory of shapes, you have a memory of people and everything else, you're the one that will create a vision. You don't know this, but you'll create a vision of what they want you to create. It works 100%. This is not flawed technology. This is real. It's not Star Trek. It's simpler than what you would think, right? So they don't need to show a hologram in front of everybody when they can put the vision right in your head and you see what's glorious to you.
So they can cause me to have hallucinations.
Yes, they can. Yes, they can. And here's the big point about it. With a hologram, you're going to see what somebody has designed.
Yeah.
If they send a signal out into your visual cortex, you're going to see exactly what you love. You're going to hear exactly what you love, right? So you're going to like whatever you're the one, you're the creator. They're just going to stimulate it. They're going to lock in all your senses towards that visual, and you will see it with your own eyes. It'll be an experience for you. Now, what's more powerful, a hologram or an experience?
Experience is more powerful.
There you go. So they don't need the moving thing. They don't need. They just don't need it.
No, because
there are much more powerful techniques out there that are proven. They're proven.
So in other words, it's way more powerful than even MK Ultra. You're saying that we've advanced way past that.
You could say that some of it is part of the new MK Ultra. As far as that goes.
Okay.
Because what if you caused a person to live in an environment, but to them it was a positive environment. It smelled good. It was just what they wanted. It was fine-tuned, just like a dream would be, except it's in real life. That's what I'm talking about.
Wow.
We're not talking about we're not talking about some mystical technology.
Yeah.
We're talking about very, very simple technology that's been fine-tuned, right? Because in most cases, some of the more advanced techniques that people think of are astounding to those who know about this simple technology. They'll say, what a great idea. But we're doing it another way, a much more simple way. They found out the human body knows how to create just about everything. All you have to do is stimulate the human body, and based upon that person's memories, that person's interactions, and everything else, they will create their environment. All you have to do is stimulate it.
Wow. Let me ask you one more question, Mike, here, or at least another area, and that is fentanyl. Fentanyl, we know it's a deadly chemical. It's now outrageously coming across the border. Now they're wrapping it in candy and all this different stuff. Mike, how in the world is this happening? How can this much deadly drug, who's making it? Where's it coming from? And oh, by the way, how are we not stopping it? How does something this bad just can walk into our country constantly. What's going on here? Who's in charge? What I'm trying to say is, who's calling the shots here?
Back in the 80s, they had a consensus basketball.
Okay.
What you're thinking about something. The USA has the largest prisons, the largest amount of criminals on the face of the earth. The USA does.
Yeah.
Out of all those criminals, most of those criminals that are locked up like that is somehow drug related. Okay. There's an addiction factor in the USA that is higher than any other country out there.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
The CIA in the 1980s, when they were talking about various drugs, they had a report that came out to them. It wasn't widely circulated, but to cut off drugs from coming into the country would send us into we would socially explode, right? You would have your average person that you didn't even know was addicted to something, robbing pharmacies. You would have violence. You would have sickness would be off the scales. This country would degrade overnight, right? So they agreed to let a certain amount of narcotics into this country to manage this growing addiction problem. Well, now the addiction rate has skyrocketed, except for the new children that have been born, because for some reason these new kids want nothing to do with medication or any of this, that they don't, some of these new kids don't. But the addiction factor is so high that if they stop it, right? Can you imagine if fentanyl all of a sudden stopped for those who are addicted to fentanyl? You would find people of every social level. They would come out of the woodwork desperate. Some of these people are armed. Some of these people are doctors. Some of these people are bankers. Some of these people have high positions and prestige. It would all break down. And you would have violence, uncontrollable violence. By the way, a lot of people are armed who are, addicted to some type of narcotic. So if they stop this, we break down in less than a week. They already know this. So
wow.
There's an acceptable amount that will always come through. Always acceptable. Now, they put it on the news however they want. But think of it this way. If we can find Saddam Hussein in a hole, you need to tell me we can't find the fentanyl. Fentanyl has a strange color in certain objects. In fact, they can identify drugs from the air, right?
Right.
But again, they're going to allow a certain amount into the country because the country, if you took that away, it's like taking alcohol away or cigarettes away or stuff like that. If you all of a sudden stop that, this country wouldn't function. It would break down.
Right.
People would see the true nature of this country. That would be good, right? That would be good at all.
So this is a deliberate. They deliberately are keeping a certain percentage of the populace sedated.
That's right.
Sedated.
They have to let it come through because if you start exposing everybody, and that's the next thing that was in this report. To actually have control over those who are addicted is to let the populace know who's addicted.
Yeah.
And if that were to happen, all confidence in government would cease. Confidence in this place and that place would cease. People would believe that their life has been, some ruse or something. And that you're looking at a social breakdown that is just unrivaled. But I hate to tell people, if we go to war, right? If we go to war, if there are disruptions because of geological issues and problems, that's going to take place.
Yeah.
And all you have to do is, a lot of people do not factor this in with something that would happen to this country. They think that China has to take us over or something like that. No. If we have a geological disruption and the drug flow stops because of some geological problem, we're going to start self-destructing. It's just not going to look good.
Wow. What a great analogy of that. We're a sedated nation. We're a sedated nation. And we can't just go cold turkey, because if we did, we'd go crazy. We'd go insane. The violence would go off the chart. This is sad. Really, this is a really sad state of affairs. Isn't Jesus needed more than ever? I mean, we've got to get people off of everything, off of all this stuff, and on to Christ. And that's why we're here every day. This is why, Mike, you're coming on here on these Thursday nights. Is we've got to get people to the truth, to the only answer is Jesus. Really, at the end of the day, it's Christ.
It is. And Pastor, and the time is coming. It's so close. The time is so close. The last call will be coming in quickly. That time is so close.
I was talking earlier in the show about your dream several years ago, when you saw me, I'm a man who became me, apparently, preaching and telling people, get on the barge, get on the barge, get on the ship, it's about to leave.
Yeah. Pastor, who would have a dream about a guy on a boat that's coming around the corner saying, are you serious? Are you serious?
We're in a pineapple shirt. No, nobody would do that. Nobody would have it.
That was just unbelievable. So there's nobody alive that can ever tell me God did not make disappoint. Right?
Right.
And I told Angela a long time ago, I said, that Pastor Paul marks the end of all this. I said, you watch, as soon as he grows, things will break down. And what's been happening?
Yeah, that's exactly what's been happening. Yeah.
And one of the biggest things that got me, one of the markers in that was when you first got on satellite TV with LaCie.
Right, yes.
LaCie. Out of all names, it had to be LaCie.
LaCie, yes.
LaCie. And that's what that means. It's talking about water, right? It's talking about water. And so I said, there's no way. So in the dream, you were in that boat coming around the corner, but in real life, your ministry, right, was on satellite with a company called LaCie.
LaCie, yes. Still on it. I'm still on it. You can't make this stuff up, Mike.
You can't make that one up.
No, you can't. No. Well, I tell you, we appreciate the fact that you come on here every week and help us understand. You help us understand why things happen, why they do, and what's also coming, and also how we can counter that by prayer and through our faith in Jesus Christ, and how we have to really get prepared for such a time. It's not going to get better. This world is not going to get better. Would you agree with me? It's not going to get better.
I would agree. It's not. And you know what? The worse this world gets, the closer the arrival is. It really is.
Amen.
So it's a real promise to us, but also people have been having a problem. They always say, you know how they say, I can't talk to my family about Christ. They won't listen. This person won't listen. Listen, God is sending events. Things are going to happen, and they will come straight to
you.
The people they won't listen to. Here's the question, though. Will they be ready to give an answer? An honest, upright, righteous answer, right? Will they be ready to demonstrate? This is what they have to get ready for, because the people are coming. They already know you're a Christian. They already know you believe differently than a lot of other people out there. And they ridiculed that for a long time, but they're coming to you because they say, well, everybody else, nobody else said anything about this. Look, it's happening. And they will ask. This will start happening all over the place. Pastor, also, I hope people are prepped. And I hope those who were, because there's no such thing as offense. You're either on the side of Christ or not. I hope they actually wake up and make a decision before it's too late, because sadly, some people will not get on that boat. They just won't get on the boat.
They turn back and it's too late.
Yeah, they do.
Mike, appreciate you coming on tonight. This is, again, powerful. Thank you for Sunday night, too. That special report you did on for us live on Patreon. It's really it's touched a lot of hearts. It shook some folks up. It's woke some people up. And I appreciate you doing that and keeping us informed, really.
Well, God bless you, Pastor Paul. That is forward motion. That's still, that's a lot of nervous folks behind that.
Yeah, that's still in play right now, what you're telling me.
Yes, it is.
Big time.
Yes, it is. Yes,
All right. All right. Well, we'll be touching base with you some more on that subject. So thank you.
All right, Pastor Paul. God bless you. It's always an honor.
It's an honor. It's an honor for me, for sure, and all of us. Thank you for being with us. God bless. Back around the world, folks. Wow, some really good stuff here tonight.
Hang on. I'll let him say what he was going to say. I hung up too quick.
100% guarantee in your soul that you're ready, then you need to be saved tonight. And tonight is your night. As he gets the song, come.
Now the sound's gone completely. Okay, he's plugging his stuff again.
All right, so yes, you can contact me. There it is, through any of my social media, DM me, or through the Judgment of the Nephilim website, and you're good to go. You got the hookup. Okay, second winner is pardon if I mispronounced the name, but it looks like Stephen Bokos. Stephen Bokos, you are the second winner. And again, you get the Final Nephilim paperback and the study guide. So again, contact me. You have the information here, and you are both the winners for tonight. And again, shout out to Carlo P. Send me your information, and you'll get your prize. I promise. Absolutely. I love to send. I love to share. I love to be a blessing to others. So hopefully,
okay, he's hanging up as well, but I've got this. Hang on. Doesn't matter. Didn't load.
Now, wait a minute. How is it possible? We're told that man cannot see the face of God and live. Well, this is where one of the examples in the Old Testament where we see the second power in heaven. We begin to get a picture of the Trinity in the Old Testament. Yes, God the Father in all his glory, when he passed by Moses, who was in the cleft of the rock, could not see his face because it's overwhelming. But God in the flesh, we see the angel of the Lord in the Old Testament.
Yeah, and I didn't see it. He went live about 45 minutes ago. It's about the stones. I think there is stones that speak to God, because that's why Marvel and they'd all go for them stones, because you know how Satan twists it. And the Sanhedrin with their 12 stones.
A number of places. That is God in a form that humans can perceive. And he called these men up his holy mountain and had a meal. It was a symbol of what was going to happen. Well, it's a symbol of what's going to happen when we are finally restored to the divine council, when God finally brings us back into the divine council, which we got kicked out of when Adam and Eve disobeyed. But this was a message to the 70, meaning all the gods of the nations. This is what is in store for humanity. You're toast and you're being replaced. It's like the prodigal son, the parable of the prodigal son. We will someday be welcomed back, covered with pig dung and smelling awful and looking horrible. And God will welcome us with open arms. And that is be the restoration of humanity to the divine council. His message to the 70 gods, again, representing all the gods of the nations. Now, here's the thing. The Feast of Tabernacles in the fall. I want to talk about this in my time today. And without getting another hour, I couldn't get into it. The Spring Festival, this ancient city of Emar, pagan city, sacrificing 70 lambs in the spring, okay, around the time of the Passover, which is when Jesus was sacrificed, who John the Baptist called, behold, the Lamb of God who takes away the sin of the world, okay? Jesus was the perfect lamb to sacrifice. The fall feast, which was the feast, as Rabbi Zev Porat talked about earlier today, the Feast of Tabernacles. When God gave that feast to Moses, he said, okay, here's the plan. It's a 7-day feast. A 7-day festival. On day 1, you sacrifice 13 bulls. Day 2, you sacrifice 12. Day 3, 11, etc. 7 days. Counting down by 1 each day, 70 bulls sacrificed. The bulls. In the ancient world, the bull imagery is connected to these pagan gods over and over again. El, chief god of the Canaanites, called Bull El. Kronos, chief god of the old gods of the Greeks, the Titans. His name comes from a Semitic word meaning horned one. And yet God, giving the feast to Moses, said, okay, here's what Passover, here's what the Feast of Tabernacles represents. Represents God delivering his people from all the other gods of the world, all the other gods of the nations. 70 bulls, the complete set, not one left out. They are sacrificed. God has delivered his people from the pagan gods, all the gods that God allotted to the nations of the world. And as Zeb pointed out, when Jesus came the first time, he was sacrificed as the lamb at Passover in the spring. When he comes back, it's Tabernacles time, where God delivers his people from the gods of the nations. It's beautiful.
That's amazing. It's just mind-blowing. How everything's so perfect and just kind of fits together like that is just,
I know.
Coach knows. All right. So it's like almost like you read this when I was looking, because you're just going through my production. Let me switch batteries before we die.
Sure.
100% electric small SUV.
Yeah, a lot of what we think we know about Tammuz and Semiramis comes from Alexander Hislop and his book, The Two Babylons, which was written in the 1860s, if I remember correctly. And he meant well, but he had an axe to grind against the Roman Catholic Church. And there's a lot of research that's been done since the 1860s, a lot of texts that have been found that he did not know about, could not know about, because they were still underneath the sand in Iraq and Syria, like the text from Ugarit, not found until 1928. Some of those not translated until the 1970s, 1980s. So a lot of what we know about that period of history, he was drawing from Herodotus, the Greek historian, whose audience was very open to stuff that made the Orientals, Persians, what was left of the Akkadians and so forth, Babylonians, look bad. Because Herodotus was writing at about the time the Persians were, marching to try to destroy Greece. So you got to take what Herodotus wrote with a grain of salt. Semiramis was probably an Assyrian queen whose name was Shamu Ramat. She ruled as regent for a little while in the late 9th century BC, which would be about 811, 810 BC to about 800 BC. Now, Islam taught that she was the wife of Nimrod. Nimrod was the king of Uruk. Now,
yeah, I probably will play it, and I play a bit of this stuff, so I will do that. Tomorrow I'm going to break it up and just do a bit of music for a change and see how I go with that, because it's a brand new IP address, so I mightn't attract the algorithms for copyright. I'll give it a punt.
Syria is northern Iraq, around Mosul and Kirkuk, where the Kurds live. Uruk was down in southeastern Iraq. That's where the Sumerians lived. The Bible calls it Iraq, E-R-E-C-H. Uruk, U-R-U-K, is what is how scholars transliterate the name, but today we still call it Iraq. Same name. 5,000 years after Nimrod lived, it's the same name. But there's a period of history that scholars call the Uruk expansion, when that city in southeastern Iraq dominated the entire Fertile Crescent as far north as southern Turkey. They controlled raw materials, trading posts. Basically, they dominated for almost 1,000 years all of the Fertile Crescent, from the Persian Gulf to the mountains of southern Turkey. Well, Nimrod would have lived somewhere in that period when Uruk essentially dominated the known world. But about 3100 BC, 3000 BC, suddenly it all fell apart. It all fell apart, and scholars say, and I'm trying to piece this together now, I'm doing some study on this, and I'm not well schooled on this, so take this as tentative. But something happened around that period of history that caused a real disruption in society. Scholars know this and say, yeah, okay, for some reason, these settled cities and something, there was some disruption and everything just kind of went to pieces for a while. Well, okay, that kind of sounds like what happened after the Tower of Babel incident, where God confused the languages and suddenly there was a real reshuffling of the societies. Again, is there any smoking gun? No, there's not. But Nimrod, second generation king of Uruk after the flood, was in southeastern Iraq. Shamu Ramat, queen of Assyria, which is northern Iraq, quite a distance away, and about 2,000 years after Nimrod died. So Nimrod and Semiramis, wrong millennium, wrong nations. Tammuz was Dumuzi, an ancient Sumerian, and he was another king of Uruk in and around the time of Gilgamesh. I forget the order on the Sumerian king list, but according to the legend, he was married to the goddess Inanna, Ishtar, and he was a king of a city called Bad Tibera. And the way the story goes, demons wanted to drag Inanna's son, who's the patron god of this city, Bad Tibera, to the netherworld. And Inanna said, don't take him, take my husband instead. And so Dumuzi got dragged down to hell. And he became the first of the ancient Near Eastern dying and rising gods. Down in the netherworld for 6 months, then back in, corresponding with the cycle of vegetation. When everything turns brown, oh, Dumuzi's dead. This went on for a long time, obviously, because Ezekiel saw it, the people weeping for Dumuzi, in the temple. And this would have been in the 6th century BC, around 590, 580 BC, because Ezekiel had gone off with the first wave of refugees to Babylon. So, well, they're weeping for the god because the vegetation is dead. And so he's down in the netherworld, and so they're mourning the loss of the god as part of a ritual. And then in the spring, when things begin to green up again, then everybody celebrates, and perhaps fertility rites. I'm not studied this a lot.
This took place at the Temple Mount.
Yeah, but there were other dying and rising gods around the ancient Near East. For example, Adonis to the Greeks, Melkart who was a god of the city of Tyre around the time of Ahab and Jezebel, which makes the incident on Mount Carmel a lot more interesting, because Melkart, as one of the dying and rising gods, would be in the netherworld for half the year and above the ground for half the year. We know from a text found at the city of Tyre that there was a ritual performed similar to the drink offering, where you pour out water for the god. This is based on an older ritual amongst the Amorite peoples and the Mesopotamians, going back at least to about 3000 BC, or well, at least 2000 BC, based on what I've read, where you have to pour out a drink offering and offer food to your dead ancestors, which you summon through a necromancy ritual. They had to do it every month on the 30th day of the month, on the night of no moon.
That's kind of a side point here. There's a ritual today where people pour their drink out for their dead friends. Is that a continuation, you think?
It may well be. Because it may well be. In fact, in the ancient world, Mesopotamia was considered so important that the pourer of water was an epithet or a name, a way of describing your heir. You know, your heir, your oldest son, would take over the responsibility for performing this monthly ritual, which is called the Kispum, Kispum. You would have to lay out. It's not like kids laying out, cookies and milk for Santa Claus on Christmas Eve. This was a ritual where you had three parts, where you had a communal meal where the family would get together and eat. Then you would have the calling of the name, where you call out the names of the ancestors, and you have the food sitting out for them, and then the pouring of water. And so the heir who took over this responsibility would be the pourer of water. If a couple was childless, they would adopt an heir as the pourer of water. In some cases, they would make inheriting the estate of the soon-to-be deceased contingent upon him performing the ritual, because in ancient Mesopotamia it was believed that if your descendants didn't perform the ritual correctly and set out the food and the drink, you were condemned to eat dust and clay for all eternity. Kind of like what God condemned Satan to when he kicked him out of Eden. You will be a crawl on your belly eating dust and clay forever. Yeah. This is why Abraham was so freaked out. He was getting to an old age and he didn't have an heir. And here's an interesting thing. He said, Eliezer of Damascus is going to be my heir. Except that the word translated as Damascus, Ha Damasek, was probably wrong. According to a scholar I read about this ritual, he said it was probably Ben Mesek, which means son of the cup. Son who pours out the water. Eliezer will have to be the son of the cup, and he's not even related to me. And then God gives him an heir, Isaac. But Abraham didn't know any better, because the concept of Sheol and Abraham's bosom, all of that had not yet been revealed to the prophets. God was teaching Abraham where he was and taking him from there. Now, this hydrophory, this Yarid ritual was known even perhaps as far back as the time of the Watchers on Mount Hermon. A scholar named Edward Lipinski, very famous, they call him Orientalist, specialist in the ancient Near East, did a very important paper about El and the abode of El, the Canaanite creator god, Mount Hermon. The explorer Sir Charles Warren in 1869 climbed Mount Hermon. In September of 1869, he found an ancient temple dated to the Greek period. So, after Alexander the Great conquered the Levant, a temple with a stone there. It was like 4 feet high, 18 inches wide, 12 inches thick, granite or limestone. And inscribed on it were the words in Greek, "Those who, by the order of the Most High and Holy God, those who swore an oath proceed from here." Now, anyone's studied Mount Hermon and the Watchers know who swore an oath on Mount Hermon. These angels who came down on Mount Hermon and said, well, 200 according to the Book of Enoch.
Yeah, that's right.
But again, 70 is a representative number, meaning all the gods of the nations. But these 200 were condemned to Tartarus afterward. Those are the prisoners that Jesus proclaimed to in 1 Peter 3:19, when he was dead in the flesh but alive in spirit, went down and proclaimed to the prisoners.
The Mount Hermon transgressors.
Yeah. The way Dr. Michael Heiser puts it, he says, and I'm paraphrasing what Mike says, but it's like Jesus went down there and said, "Bet you didn't expect to see me here, but here's a newsflash. On the third day, I'm getting out of here, and you're still dead." So, the other thing that Sir Charles Warren found on the summit of Hermon is that the summit is scooped out, like it would have been basically excavated to receive these offerings, this Yared, which is based on the same root as the name of the Jordan River. You remember that when you transliterate from Semitic or Hebrew to English, the Y becomes a J. It means to come down, to pour out. The Jordan River comes down from Hermon to the Sea of Galilee. And so this ritual where you pour out this water may have been performed on the summit of Hermon. And what Edward Lipinski, the scholar, wrote was that Warren also found on the summit this low stone wall that forced you to circumambulate to the summit as you walk up to it, which is similar to the ritual that's been performed down to this day in Mecca, where you have to circumambulate the Kaaba with the Kaaba always on your left. Well, that's exactly how you do it. So Sir Charles Warren in 1869 asked the question, is the practice at the Kaaba, did it originate here? So, interesting. Now here's the other thing. We know, as I said, that this ritual was performed for the god of Tyre, Melkart, by one of the Roman emperors, I think 2nd century AD, which is long after the confrontation of Mount Carmel. But think about this. Melkart was the city god of Tyre, the Baal of Tyre, the lord of Tyre, at the time of Ahab and Jezebel, when Elijah confronted the priests of Baal on Mount Carmel. As part of this, he sent a servant down the mountain to get water from a river, to bring it up the mountain, like on Mount Hermon, and poured the water out on top of this. It wasn't to make it the wood harder to burn. It was to mock this ritual that had been done for this god, Melkart. God reversing the rituals of the pagan gods to make a mockery of them. And then, of course, he used the weapon of the chief god of the Phoenicians and the Canaanites and the Amorites to consume the sacrifice. You know, we think of fire from heaven like a flamethrower. No, he was using a lightning bolt, which was the chief god, the chief weapon of the storm god, Hadad, who's usually called Baal in the Bible. So, and here's the kicker. Melkart was just the Phoenician name of Hercules.
No way!
So the priests.
No way!
Keep going. So the prophets of Baal who were destroyed at Mount Carmel may well have been priests of Hercules, who was one of the dying and rising gods, like Melkart. So the questions that Elijah was taunting his priests with make more sense. Oh, maybe he's sleeping. Oh, okay, maybe it's the wrong time of year. He's in the netherworld. They can't hear you. Or maybe he's on a journey. Remember the myth of Hercules. We had to go perform these labors to redeem himself after killing his wife and children because Hera drove him mad. So maybe he's off, trying to collect, the golden fleece or whatever. I forget what the myth says, but it makes more sense when you understand what they knew back then that we have since forgotten because we don't have the worldview of the prophets and apostles.
Amazing. Amen. You said El was the chief god of the Canaanites?
Yeah, the creator god of the Canaanites.
Okay, so is there a connection in the Hebrew translations? El is translated as Lord God, correct?
Well, it depends. In some contexts, it probably does refer to, right.
Is God in flesh, right?
El became the generic term for God in the Semitic world.
Okay.
In fact, it became so prominent that some scholars now are convinced that the name of the old god of the Sumerians, Enlil, which they used to believe was based on the Sumerian words En, which means Lord, and Lil, which means wind or ether or something. They're now believing that that's actually just a corruption of the Semitic Il-Ilu, meaning God of gods. That in other words, instead of being a Sumerian god, that Enlil, who was then replaced by Marduk in the Babylonian myth cosmology, which they just inherited from the Sumerians, more or less, was actually a Semitic god who was brought from the northwest, where we find Dagon, same god, different name, El, same god, different name, Kumarbi of the Hurrians and Hittites, same god, different name, Baal-Hamon of the Phoenicians, same god, different name. Their points of origin all point to northern Syria or southern Turkey. Not far from the mountain where Baal the storm god, was supposed to have built his temple, Mount Zephon. So this old god, this El or Il-Ilu, god of gods, this old, I argue, is actually Kronos of the Greeks, Saturn of the Romans, king of the Titans, who, like the Watchers from Mount Hermon, was condemned to Tartarus. 2 Peter 2:4 says that the angels who sinned were thrust down to hell. That's how most English translations read. But the Greek word translated hell is actually tartarou, which means Tartarus, thrust down to Tartarus. In the Greek mind, that's a different place from Hades. That's a special level of netherworld prison reserved for the old gods, the supernatural threats to the divine order.
Reading my question. Seriously, because Tartarus hell is one of the things I wrote.
No, Tartarus is a separate level reserved for the. That is the abyss.
So a human goes dies without being saved. They go to hell.
Yeah.
An angel dies. They go to Tartarus.
Well, I don't know if they die per se. I don't know that they will actually die until they're thrown into the lake of fire, the second death. But yes, there is a special prison that's reserved for them.
Is that where Henry Gruber saw? Are you familiar with that story?
I'm not. I've met Henry a couple times, but I've not heard that story.
Apparently he was translated down there and saw them change. Pretty amazing stuff.
Well, it's similar to what Enoch reported in the book of First Enoch with the flaming mountains in the netherworld.
7 mountains or something like that?
Yeah, the mountains in the netherworld that are burning, which relates to the stones of fire that God talked about in Ezekiel 28, the divine rebel from Eden who walked amongst the stones of fire.
Are they separate entities, or is that Lucifer disguising himself? Is Lucifer Baal, pretty much?
Well, I argue that Lucifer is Baal, and it's mainly because of the connections we see in the Bible. In Isaiah 14, Lucifer, which is really kind of a mistranslation. The Hebrew is Halel ben Shakar, which means light bringer, son of the dawn. Shakar was actually a deity in the Canaanite religion of dawn. But when Jerome translated the Bible into the Latin, the Vulgate translation, he used the Roman, or the Latin equivalent of light bringer, lux ferus, light bringer. And we English speakers have just sort of adopted that as a personal name, Lucifer. Well, again, it really just means light bringer. But Isaiah 14 says that what he was trying to do was to establish his mount of assembly in the heights of the north, the sides of the north, the uttermost north. There are a few English translations that actually get it right. This actually points back to the mountain that was sacred to the storm god, Baal. Or Hadad was his proper name. Baal just means Lord, which sort of became a proper name over time. But it was also considered sacred to the storm gods of the Hurrians, called Tesha, the storm god of the Hittites, called Tammuz, the storm god of the Greeks, called Zeus, actually fought a major battle there against the god of chaos, Typhon, at Mount Zephon. Well, the phrase in Isaiah 14, translated sides of the north, heights of the north, uttermost north, Yarkate Zephon, is only used 3 times in the Bible. There, Psalm 48, where Mount Zephon was compared to Mount Zion. It's kind of some wordplay, actually. Har Zephon, Har Zion. But the only other place it's used is Ezekiel 38 and 39. You can tell I don't speak Hebrew. Ezekiel 38 and 39, and Ezekiel identifies that as the place from which Gog of Magog will bring his troops. You will come from the uttermost north. Yeah, you will come from Yarkate Zephon, Mount Zephon. Now, here's an interesting thing. Baal, the storm god, was the chief god, the king of the gods, considered called a son of El in the Canaanite religion, but he became the king of the gods by defeating the god of death and defeating the god of the sea. Similar to the tension in Greek mythology, by the way, between the storm god Zeus, the god of the sea, Poseidon, and the god of death, Hades. In Canaanite religion, Baal had to defeat the god of death, Mot, and the god of the sea, called Yam, in order to become the king of the gods. The Greeks got their religion from the Canaanites. Well, Amorites, really, but... So anyway, that mountain, Mount Zephon, was so important to the Hebrews because it was so important to their neighbors in Canaan that Zephon became the word for the compass point north. In every other Semitic language from the ancient Near East, the word for north is Simal. But in Hebrew, it's Zephon. That's how important that was because of its relationship to that God. So in the New Testament, Jesus, confronted by the Pharisees, says, oh, he's casting out demons by the power of Beelzebul, which means Baal the prince. Baal the prince of demons, I guess. Jesus also in Revelation 2, in the letter to the church of Pergamum, says, I know where you live. It's where Satan's seat, it's where Satan dwells. Satan's seat in Pergamum. Well, that was the great altar of Zeus, who, like Baal, was a storm god. So Satan to Jesus, and Jesus, by the way, replying to the Pharisees, connected Beelzebul, Baal the prince, to Satan. So Jesus identified the storm god as Satan. Isaiah 14, storm god Lucifer. So yes, Lucifer is Baal, is Satan. It's all connected. Now, how do we figure out which gods and which cultures are the same from one? That, see, how does Shakespeare put it? That way madness lies. They lie. We don't know. I am under the opinion that the ancient goddess of sex and war, Ishtar, Inanna, kind of split off her personality by the time of the Bible, because to the Canaanites of Ugarit and the Canaanites who lived around, and by the way, for clarification, Canaanite is just a geographical designation like Babylonian. The Babylonian Empire of Hammurabi the Great was founded by Amorites. They were Amorites. The Canaanites who lived in Canaan, they were Amorites. It's like saying I'm a Chicagoite because I was born there. No, I'm German, Swedish, Welsh, English.
So the Amorites were the ones who lived directly, timeline speaking, it goes
from about 2000, around the year 2000 BC, the Amorites somehow emerged from a period of chaos in the ancient Near East, which is what we would call today Iraq, Syria, Jordan, Lebanon, Israel. The Amorites came out with Amorite kingdoms in control of all of that. Everything from what is now Iraq to northern Egypt. In fact, when the Israelites were in Egypt, they weren't Egyptian kings. They were under the rule of Amorites. Amorite names. In fact, there was actually a pharaoh during that period whose name was Jacob. Yeah. Yaqub Har, Jacob of the mountain. They don't teach you that. And the gods that they worshipped were Semitic gods. Baal, Astarte, Ishtar, Resheph, the god of plagues and archers and chariot warriors, who, and I didn't even mention this today, it's Apollo of the Greeks and Romans, the gatekeeper of the underworld. Oh yeah, Revelation 9, he's the king of those in the abyss. Opens and lets them out. It's all connected. So the Amorites had this belief. They were the ones who worshiped their ancestors. They were the ones who worshiped the Rephaim and summoned them through necromancy rituals. And God, when he confirmed his covenant with Abraham, said your descendants are going to go to Egypt. They'll come back in the, what did he say, the fourth generation, because the iniquity of the Amorites is not yet complete. He tied it to the iniquity of the Amorites. Guess what? The Amorites were also the forefathers of the Phoenicians, of the Arameans, who caused so much trouble after the time of David for Israel and for Judah. The Arabs and the gods of the Amorites, who were still worshipped in Arabia into the Christian era, like the moon god, Sin, the war god, and this is what I was getting to with Ishtar and Astarte, split off a male aspect. So during the time of the judges, when Astarte, the goddess of sex, was worshipped, her male aspect, Athtar, the war god, was likewise worshipped. The gods of the Amorites continued to be worshipped in Arabia, and I argue in my forthcoming book that they formed a coalition that emerged from Arabia in the 7th century as a religion that will be the world's largest within the next 50 years.
Amazing. All right, well, you just answered a couple more of my questions over there. Zeus also is Zeus Lucifer. All right, so.
Yes, Zeus is Lucifer and Thor, which is sad because we really like the Thor movies.
Well,
but when you're watching Thor on the screen, he's the storm god, which means, okay, well, it's
about those Marvel movies. Yeah, I used to love those, but something ever since I became Christian,
Yeah.
it's just something inside of me is like,
And isn't it interesting the way Hollywood is beating this drum about the return of the Titans? Thanos, the Mad Titan, Sam Worthington, who was in Clash of the Titans and Wrath of the Titans, starred in a movie last year, went straight to Netflix called The Titan.
Yep.
Yeah, and the new Godzilla movie.
It's a crappy movie. I tried to watch it last night.
Where they have rebranded them. They're no longer Mutos, which is what, monsters of unusual size or whatever. They rebranded them as the Titans, the original and rightful rulers of Earth.
And when I saw that trailer, I actually enjoyed the first Godzilla movie.
Oh, so did I.
I thought it was great. I was managing the theater at the time. It was a great time. And when I saw the trailer for the next one, I was excited for like 10 seconds. And I was like, wait a minute, what are they trying to do here?
I'm wanting to watch it because I just love me a good monster movie. But yeah, it's also for the programming because, again, presenting them as Titans, the original and rightful rulers of the Earth. The Titans are still around. In fact, I argue in my book, Last Clash of the Titans, that they are somehow still influencing things on this earth, even though they are currently chained in the abyss. Revelation 9 says they're going to get out for 5.5 months at the end.
When they come back, the Nephilim, spirits of the dead Nephilim come back in the end times.
Mhm.
Do you believe they're going to be back in their physical bodies as giants, or their spirit bodies possessing humans through like mark of the beast technology?
When the Nephilim return, and we understand that the Nephilim, the spirits of the Nephilim that were destroyed in the days of Noah, in the flood, were barred entrance into the afterlife, into the netherworld, into heaven, basically condemned to roam the earth. That was the belief of the early church. That was the belief of the Jews in the time of Jesus and throughout, the Old Testament period. It wasn't until Augustine in about the 5th century that belief went away. He also basically turned the church away from believing that the Nephilim had been created at all. Ezekiel, though, saw it. And this is the thing. God bless people like Kelly Marzulli who've been, teaching this for a long time. He's right. The Nephilim are returning. Where I differ with LA, and I've got to give him credit, because without him and his book Nephilim, which was a novel that got me down this path, I wouldn't be here right now. But I think Ezekiel 39 is a clue, but you got to understand the worldview of the prophets to understand what Ezekiel was writing. In Ezekiel 39, he's writing about the culmination of the war of Gog and Magog. And Gog was the Old Testament Antichrist figure. Okay? He's the figure that John in the book of Revelation calls the Antichrist. That is the same war that culminates with the Battle of Armageddon, which is fought for the Har Moed, God's Mount of Assembly, which is Zion, the Temple Mount in Jerusalem. Ezekiel says, God said that he will prepare a place in Israel for burial of Magog, the forces of Magog. The Valley of the Travelers east of the sea refers to east of the Dead Sea, and it will block the travelers. The key is understanding that travelers in the Old Testament concept, in the Old Testament world, were spirits that would travel or cross over from one plane of existence to another. In other words, the realm of the dead to the land of the living. And the places where he identifies east of the Dead Sea are places that during the Exodus, the stations of the Exodus, refer to a couple of places that are named for these interactions with the spirit realm. One of the stops in the Exodus, one of the stations of the Exodus is called Ovoth, which means spirits of the dead. It's based on a root word Ov, which means medium. The medium of Endor that Saul went to see was the Ov of Endor. In fact, one of the giants killed by David's men, Ishbi, they condensed the word. Ishbi Benab is how it looks to us in English. Ishbi Ben Ov, Ishbi, son of the necromancer, son of the medium. And he was of the descendants of the Rapha, the sons of the Rephaim. The Rephaim were these spirits that the Amorites, the Canaanites, believed were the spirits of the mighty men who were of old, the ancestors of their kings. They were called in Canaanite texts, called by scholars the Rephaim texts, written about the time of the Judges, where these Rephaim were summoned through necromancy rituals to the tabernacle of El, Mount Hermon, where El, they believed, would speak words of revivification to resurrect these spirits that were called warriors of Baal. And in these texts, they're described as warriors. They mount their chariots and they travel first one day and then another. And at dawn of the third day, they arrive to be resurrected. Like Jesus, who went down and preached and proclaimed to the spirits in prison until dawn of the third day, when he arrived, except that he really was resurrected. And Ezekiel, in Ezekiel 39 says, this is where these travelers will be buried. Another one of the stops on the, in fact, the mountain where Moses was led by God to get his only view of the Holy Land, the Promised Land. Climb this mountain of the Avarim. In Hebrew, that means travelers. Mount Nebo is the mountain of the travelers. It's right there across from Jericho in the plains of Moab. And that's where this demonic army will fall. Now, I believe that the Nephilim will return. I believe they're going to be the demons who possess a human army. I think by this point, the restrainer will have been removed. The church will be removed. So I pray I'm right, that we won't be here for that day, because that's the day of Armageddon. And when this demonic army comes against Jerusalem to try to claim God's mounted assembly, just like Lucifer in Isaiah 14, I will establish my mount of assembly on Mount Zaphon, raise himself above the stars, the angels of God. On that day, when God personally takes the battlefield, which Ezekiel describes, the travelers will be destroyed. And interestingly, in that verse in Ezekiel 39, he says, then the world will know I am the Holy One in Israel. That phrase is similar to one that we see in the Old Testament many times. The Holy One of Israel. Ezekiel 39, after he destroys the Antichrist army in the battle of Armageddon that ends the war of Gog and Magog, he becomes the Holy One in Israel because he's on the battlefield. So yes, that is when, I mean, the Nephilim have always been here. If they're the spirits of those who died in the flood 6,000 years ago, they've always been with us because demons have always been with us. But on that day, they will be inhabiting the bodies of I believe, this army that comes against Israel. It will literally be an army of the evil dead, like the ultimate zombie apocalypse. God puts a stop to it. And what does it mean when Ezekiel writes in Ezekiel 39:11, it will block the travelers? The word translated block is only used one other place in the Bible. It's in Deuteronomy, the verse that talks about thou shalt not muzzle an ox when he treads out the grain. Muzzle. I'm not quite sure what that means, but if we take it in context of what Paul tells us in 1 Corinthians 15, that we shall not all sleep, but we shall all be changed. We will be resurrected. Maybe that's what God is saying. I will block the travelers. They're dead and they are staying dead when the rest of us are resurrected into new glorified bodies.
Okay, guys, that takes me right up to 3 hours. I'm out. Tomorrow I'm going to do some music for a change, guys. Just mix it up a bit and just to chill out. Okay, guys, see you tomorrow. God bless.